Chapter 31-35. Jasper or Vein, Brother Zhua, I believe you know Hongxian God City. Although Hongxian God City is the weakest of the three, it is the closest God City in this region. Moreover, the conditions for joining Hongxian God City are very generous. They are extremely free and will not be restricted. I wonder if Brother Zhua is interested in joining Hongxian God City? Jiang Yi rubbed his hands and looked at Zhuo Wan with a slightly nervous expression. Although the young man in front of him did not exude a strong aura, his actual strength was terrifying. Moreover, this person gave Jiang Yi a mysterious feeling that he could not see through. Jiang Yi wanted to rope Zhuowen into Hongxian God City very much. After all, Hongxian God City lacked high-level experts. Now that he had met a super expert like Zhuowen, how could he let him go? Looking at Jiang Ye's nervous expression, Zhuowen was a little amused. He had the intention to join Hongxian God City. Now that Jiang Yi had personally invited him, how could he reject? Of course, Zhuowen would not say such words directly. Moreover, he did not intend to join Hongxian God City. He only wanted to enter Hongxian God City and find out the exact location of the forbidden zone of the Massacre Sky region from the City Lord. Uncle Jiang, I have indeed heard of Hongxian God City. However, I have never seen it before. If you want me to join Hongxian God City immediately, I'm afraid you are taking it too lightly. How about this? I will enter Hongxian God City to take a look. If I think it is possible, I will make a decision. Zhuowen pondered for a moment before speaking in a calm voice. Jiang Yi nodded in his heart and thought even more highly of Zhuowen. Not only was the young man in front of him powerful, but his temperament was also exceptionally strong. When faced with a choice, he did not give a direct answer. Instead, he considered carefully. The more he acted like this, the more Jiang Yi valued Zhuowen. He could not wait to bring Zhuowen to Hongxian God City immediately and show the city lord such a young talent. All right, Uncle Jiang, Miss Mei Su, why did you mobilize so many people to enter Death Canyon today? I think all of you are more aware of the dangers here than I am, right? Zhuowen said casually, appearing very casual. Zhuowen already knew the name of the young girl, which was why he was able to blurt out Mei Su's name. Jiang Yi narrowed his eyes and looked at Mei Su. He wanted to give the latter a look to tell him not to spout nonsense. Unfortunately, Jiang Ye's warning came too late. Mei Su was a simple-minded person. Moreover, Zhuowen had saved her life before. Now that Zhuowen asked this question, she answered without hesitation. Big Brother Zhua, we entered the Death Canyon for the Jasper or Vein. I was born with a unique ability to sense jade stone veins. I can feel that there's an unprecedentedly huge jade stone vein in the depths of Death Canyon. The reason we came here this time is to find the jade stone vein. It's a pity that even with 500 elite cavalrymen, we could only enter 2/3 of the Death Canyon. We underestimated the terror of the Death Canyon. Speaking of this, the little lowly Mei Su seemed a little dejected. Her beautiful eyes were slightly red and wet. Jiang Yi smiled awkwardly. His look was ignored by Mei Su, which made him feel a little embarrassed. However, when he thought of their failure, Jiang Yi didn't think it was a big deal that Zhuowen knew about this. Although Zhuowen had displayed terrifying strength, Jiang Yi didn't think that Zhuowen had the strength to enter the depths of Death Canyon. They had encountered a group of devil apes led by a devil ape leader in 2/3 of the Death Canyon, which almost wiped out their cavalrymen. Not to mention how terrifying the Death Canyon was in the depths. Isn't this jade stone only harvested from the animals and plants in a massacre heavenly domain? There's actually a jade stone vein underground? Zhuowen asked with a puzzled look. It was the first time he had heard of a jade stone vein. Xiong Fei didn't mention this to him at all. However, he knew that with Xiong Fei's reverence for him, he would definitely not hide such things from him. Since Xiong Fei didn't mention it, then even Xiong Fei didn't know about this jade stone vein. Brother Zhua, it's normal that you don't know about the jade stone vein. In the entire Massacre Heavenly Domain, the jade stone vein is a secret that only belongs to the divine cities. The tribes under the divine cities don't even know about the existence of the jade stone vein. As for the jade stone vein, I'm sure you've already guessed it. It's a place where jade stones gather. The bigger the vein, the more jade stones there are. As long as we can find a jade stone vein, it's enough to feed countless large tribes. Since Mei Su had confessed to Zhuowen, Jiang Yi didn't hide anymore and took the initiative to explain the jade stone vein to Zhuowen. Although there's a jade stone vein in the Death Canyon, it's obviously impossible for us to enter and mine it. We can't even enter the depths of the Death Canyon. Jiang Yi shook his head, and a trace of depression appeared in his eyes. He continued, "Now, our wisest choice is to leave the Death Canyon." Zhuowen's eyes lit up as he asked, "How many jade stones are there in a jade stone vein?" Jiang Yi was stunned. Looking at Zhuowen's bright eyes, he had a bad premonition. However, he still answered Zhuowen's question. There's no definite number of jade stones in a jade stone vein. Generally, the quality of jade stones in a small vein isn't high, and the quantity isn't high either. It's usually around 1 to 200,000. Larger veins may have up to 4 to 500,000 jade stones. As for larger veins, the jade stones in them are usually more than 1,000,000. Our Hongxian divine city has been established in a massacre heavenly domain for so many years, but we've only found one large vein. The quality of the jade stones in it is very high, and the quantity is more than 1,500,000. Zhuowen nodded as his eyes grew brighter. If he had known about the jade stone vein, he wouldn't have had to work so hard to hunt the Beast Kings. This was simply a thankless task. Directly finding a small vein would yield much more jade stones than killing all the Beast Kings in the Death Canyon. Big Brother Zhua, let me tell you, I can sense that the jade stone vein in the Death Canyon is definitely a large vein. If the jade stone vein is mined, it will definitely be worth more than 1,000,000 jade stones. Mei Su's little face was full of pride, but it soon turned into depression. She said, "It's a pity that the jade stone vein in the Death Canyon is not fated with us. Since there's a jade stone vein in the Death Canyon, why don't we continue moving forward?" Zhuowen leaped onto the cliff of the gorge in front of the ape leader. He grabbed the 2 godly arrows nailed to the cliff with both hands and pulled them out. Then, he hung the godly bow on his back. He didn't want to expose the fact that he could freely access the items in the spatial divine items. After all, this was his secret. Chapter 31-36. Decided to go deeper after retrieving the divine arrow. Zhuowen jumped down from the cliff and slowly walked towards Jiang Yi and Mei Su. He said indifferently, "You're already here? Are you going to give up just like that?" Jiang Yi looked at Zhuowen strangely and said, "Brother Zhua, you're not thinking of going deeper, are you? You've seen it for yourself. 2/3 of the Death Canyon is already so terrifying. I'm afraid." At this point, Jiang Yi shook his head. Obviously, he felt that the deepest part of the Death Canyon was too terrifying. Zhuowen knew what Jiang Yi was thinking and did not continue on this topic. He knew that Jiang Yi was frightened by the devil apes. "Then, do you know the exact location of the jade or vein in the depths of the Death Canyon?" Zhuowen asked. Jiang Yi shook his head and said, "Miss Mei Su only sensed the approximate location of the jade or vein. We don't know the exact location. If I can enter the depths of the Death Canyon, I can pinpoint the exact location of the jade or vein. Unfortunately, I can't." Mei Su pouted. Zhuowen's eyes flickered and said, "Miss Mei Su, I can guarantee that I can enter the depths of the Death Canyon. If you can come with me, we'll split the jade or vein equally. How about it?" As soon as he said this, Jiang Yi immediately objected. "No, the depths of the Death Canyon are too dangerous. Miss Mei Su is the daughter of our Hongxian Divine City's City Lord. How can you put yourself in danger? And Brother Zhua, you can't even guarantee your own safety. Aren't you being too irresponsible by asking Miss Mei Su to go with you?" Jiang Yi's tone was agitated. He pulled Mei Su to his side and looked at Zhuowen cautiously. Zhuowen was surprised and looked at Mei Su again. He did not expect this cute little lowly to have such a noble identity. She was the daughter of the Hongxian Divine City's City Lord. If other people from the Slaughter Heaven region heard of Mei Su's identity, they would definitely be afraid. It was a pity that Zhuowen didn't feel much about it. More accurately, He didn't have much of an idea of what a city lord was. Of course, given Zhuan's personality, even if he knew how terrifying the God City was, he still wouldn't be afraid. Uncle Jiang, you don't have to be so agitated. Am I not asking for Miss Mei Su's opinion? If she doesn't agree, I won't force her. When the time comes, I'll go in alone to take a look. Maybe I'll find something. Zhuan shrugged helplessly. This Jiang Yu was simply guarding against him like a cat protecting its cub, and this caused him to be slightly speechless. Jiang Yi heaved a sigh of relief. He was most afraid that Zhuan would forcefully bring Mei Su into the depths of Death Canyon. After all, Zhuan's strength was very strange and unpredictable. Someone who could defeat a group of devil apes was definitely stronger than him. If Zhuan really used force, Jiang Yu might not be able to block Zhuan. Brother Zhua, it's impossible for our mist to follow you into the depths of the canyon. That's simply courting death. You better give up. All right, I advise you not to try to enter the canyon. It's too dangerous. Compared to your life, the jade or vein is not worth mentioning. Jiang Yi shook his head and tried to persuade Zhuan. Unfortunately, Mei Su's words immediately made his body stiffen. Mei Su broke free from Jiang Yi and came to Zhuan. She said excitedly, Brother Zhua, are you sure you can enter the depths of the canyon? If you are, you must bring me along. Jiang Yi stared blankly at Mei Su. Zhuan glanced at the stunned Jiang Yi and immediately said to the excited Mei Su, Miss Mei Su, you trust me so much? I think you already know how dangerous the depths of the canyon are. I know, but I trust Brother Zhua more. You're so powerful. If you say you're sure, then you must be sure. Mei Su's eyes lit up and her voice was soft. Jiang Yi hurriedly said, Miss, you mustn't. Brother Zhua's strength is indeed not bad, but the dangers in the depths of the canyon are beyond our imagination. It's said that there are masters of heaven-level killing beasts in there. If there really is such a killing beast, even the city lord himself might not be able to escape. Mei Su pouted and said, Uncle Jiang, you're too timid. Masters of heaven-level killing beasts have never appeared in so many years. Even if Death Canyon is famous for its ferocity, there might not be a killing beast of this level. Also, didn't you see Brother Zhua's strength just now? That devil ape leader had the strength of a peak master of creation, but it was still killed by Brother Zhua. I'll be safe with him. Zhuan glanced at Mei Su. Ever since he saved this little girl, she seemed to have blind worship for him. Jiang Yu was speechless. He sighed lightly and took a step forward to Mei Su. He stretched out his right hand, intending to forcefully pull Mei Su back. Unfortunately, Jiang Ye's right hand was blocked by another palm. Boom! A terrifying energy ripple spread out, causing Jiang Yi to groan and retreat. He raised his head and looked at Zhuan with fear in his eyes. He said in a deep voice, Brother Zhua, what is the meaning of this? Miss Mei Su is the daughter of our city lord. If anything happens to her in Death Canyon, you will be punished and hunted down by our Hong Xian Divine City. Uncle Jiang, I said that I won't force Miss Mei Su. I have already asked for her opinion, and she has agreed. Zhuan's voice was calm as he continued. Also, I solemnly declare that I will be responsible for Miss Mei Su's safety, unless I die. I don't believe your promise. Unless you kill me today, I will not let Miss Mei Su follow you into the depths of the canyon. Jiang Yi snorted coldly and took a step forward with his right foot. The spear in his hand shot out, bringing with it a terrifying gale and an ear-piercing roar. In an instant, it was in front of Zhuan. Zhuan narrowed his eyes and stretched out his right hand, using the fate space-time annihilation. A purple river swept out and swept away Jiang Ye's spear. Within the range of the river, space-time was distorted. Jiang Ye's movements became very slow at this moment. Zhuan took a step forward and slammed his palm on Jiang Ye's chest. Jiang Yi spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated. His face was extremely pale. Uncle Jiang, your injuries are too serious. Moreover, your body doesn't have much heavenly energy left. You're no match for me in your current state. Zhuan kept the purple river and shook his head as he looked at Jiang Yi, who was in a terrible state. I said that I will not let you take Miss Mei Su away today. Jiang Ye's eyes were filled with unwillingness. He puffed out his chest and continued to walk towards Zhuowen. Uncle Jiang, I order you not to fight. Moreover, you must listen to my orders from now on. Mei Su suddenly stood in front of Jiang Yi and took out a white token from his cuff. Chapter 31-37. Lunatic Jiang Yi stopped in his tracks and looked at the white token in Mei Su's hand. His face turned ugly. Young miss, this Hongxian command token was given to you by the city lord. Use it to forcefully control all the armies in Hongxian God City in times of crisis. This token is equivalent to the city lord himself. You can only use it once, but you actually used it now. Jiang Ye's eyes were filled with disbelief as he stared at the token in Mei Su's hand. His voice was trembling. Mei Su sighed, Uncle Jiang, I'm not young anymore. I can make my own decisions. You've always treated me like a child. How can I grow up? I was forced to do this. Jiang Yi lowered his head and smiled bitterly. Young miss, you're right. I meddle too much. When he spoke up to hear, Jiang Yi suddenly raised his head and looked at Zhuowen as he said, Brother Zhuo, I'll go with you into the depths of the gorge this time. Zhuowen flatly refused. In Zhuowen's opinion, Jiang Yi and Mei Su were burdens. After all, they couldn't recover their heavenly energy in the Slaughter Heaven region, and their strength would be greatly reduced. Moreover, Jiang Yi had suffered serious injuries. Other than being a burden, they would only be a burden. On the other hand, he was different. He could continuously draw out large amounts of heavenly Tao origin crystals from the outside world to recover. Jiang Yi, on the other hand, would only consume even more heavenly Tao origin crystals. Moreover, he would have to pay more attention to Jiang Yi. Moreover, taking heavenly law origin crystals from the outside world was his secret. The fewer people who knew about it, the better. He didn't want Jiang Yi to go with him. Jiang Yi was furious. Just as he was about to refute, Mei Su said, Uncle Jiang, listen to Brother Zhuo. I believe he won't harm us. Jiang Yi was helpless. Now that Mei Su had the Hongxian token, he had no choice but to listen to her. After dealing with Jiang Yi, Zhuowen rang the bronze bell. Soon, Xiong Fei arrived with a group of beastmen. When Xiong Fei and the others saw the cavalry led by Jiang Yi, they were stunned. They stopped in their tracks and didn't dare to move forward. To them, the divine city was like an unreachable god. To them, the divine city cavalry was even more distant. Therefore, the moment they saw the divine city cavalry, they subconsciously lowered their heads and did not dare to approach. Zhuowen looked at Xiong Fei and the others in amusement and waved his hand, indicating for them to come over. Xiong Fei carefully came to Zhuowen's side and said in a low voice, Master Zhuo, what is going on? Did you offend the God City's cavalry? They're all on our side. There's no need to offend them. Zhuowen laughed, but Xiong Fei was frightened until he trembled and hurriedly said in a low voice, Lord Zhuo, I know that your strength is formidable, but you can't talk big in front of the divine city's powerhouses either. The leader was obviously an expert with a high position in the divine city. How can we be compared to him? Zhuowen shook his head inwardly and ignored Xiong Fei, who was on tenterhooks. Instead, he turned to Jiang Yi and said, Uncle Jiang, these people are from the Flowing Cloud tribe. This is the chief of the Flowing Cloud tribe, Xiong Fei. While I'm in the valley, all of you stay here and collect the jade stones from the devil ape's corpse. I will set up a creation-grade defensive formation here. This formation will be able to block off any killing beast below the level of Master Tong Tian. After Zhuowen finished speaking, he secretly took out the beast bone disc array and walked to the edge of the area. In a radius of 5 miles, he drew the outline of a formation. After using the beast bone disc array to set up the base of the formation, Zhuowen did not use the Heavenly Way origin crystal this time. Instead, he used the jade stones collected by Xiong Fei and the others to set up the base of the formation, completely completing the defensive formation. Creation-grade defensive formation? You're a creation-grade formation god master? Jiang Yi was completely shocked. His heart was filled with disbelief. However, after seeing that Zhuowen had really set up a creation-grade defensive formation, he was speechless. Brother Zhuo, you're awesome. Other than being powerful, you're actually so terrifying in terms of formation Tao. Even our Hongxian Divine City doesn't have a single creation-grade formation Godmaster. If my mother sees you, she will definitely be overjoyed." Mei Su was stunned. Soon after, her beautiful eyes were filled with even more admiration. "Miss Mei Su, how's your recovery? If you haven't recovered, we can rest here for a period of time." After setting up the defensive formation, Zhuowen came to Mei Su and asked. Mei Su shook her head and said, "There's no need for that. The divine pill that Brother Zhua gave me just now was too effective. After consuming the divine pill, most of my divine soul has recovered. Let's set off now." Zhuowen carefully sized up Mei Su. After confirming that she had indeed recovered well, he nodded and led Mei Su out of the defensive formation. Looking at Zhuowen and Mei Su's silhouettes, Jiang Yi was a little dejected. He muttered softly, "Miss, you must return safely. Otherwise, how am I going to explain this to the city lord when I return to the divine city?" "Sir, are the two of them going deep into the valley?" Xiang Fei cautiously approached Jiang Yi and asked in a soft voice. Jiang Yi glanced at Xiang Fei. The dejected aura on his body dissipated and was replaced by a dignified aura. "I heard from Zhuowen that you are the chief of the Flowing Cloud tribe. Moreover, Zhuowen seems to have a good relationship with you. Is Zhuowen from your tribe?" Jiang Yi looked at Xiang Fei and asked. Xiang Fei quickly shook his head and said, "Sir Zhua is not from our Flowing Cloud tribe. I heard that he is a newcomer who has just entered the Slaughter Heaven domain. He does not belong to any faction in the Slaughter Heaven domain. Why do you want to enter the Death Valley? It's not like you don't know how terrifying the Death Valley is." Jiang Yi calmly asked. "We don't want to. The main reason is that Sir Zhuo wants to enter the Death Valley to hunt for more emerald stones." Xiang Fei said helplessly. "Why does he want so many emerald stones?" Jiang Yi asked. "It seems that he wants to enter the Divine City. Large tribes are qualified to recommend a person to enter the Divine City. However, the recommendation requires a hefty price of 10,000 emerald stones. Our tribe only has a little over 3,000 emerald stones. Sir Zhuo wants to obtain emerald stones quickly, so he came to the Death Valley to hunt for slaughter beasts." Xiang Fei said. "He really is a madman. He is not afraid of death at all." Jiang Yi held his forehead. "This Zhuowen is too crazy." In order to obtain emerald stones quickly, he did not care about his life at all. But soon, Jiang Yi felt suspicious. He had already invited Zhuowen to enter the Divine City. In other words, if he entered the Hongxian Divine City now, there was no need for him to collect emerald stones. Chapter 31-38. Deep in the Death Canyon, the canyon was pitch black and eerily silent. The sound of footsteps colliding with the ground was eerie and horrifying in the empty canyon. Mei Su stuck close to Zhuowen as her beautiful eyes scanned the surroundings nervously. Zhuowen did not walk fast. His muscles were tense as he was constantly alert of his surroundings. He was very surprised. He had left Jiang Yi and the others for more than 2 hours and was slowly approaching the deepest part of the canyon. However, he did not encounter any danger along the way. His surroundings were eerily quiet. "Big Brother Zhua, what do you need so many jade stones for? If we can find the jade stone vein this time, we will need a lot of manpower and resources to mine it. You alone might not be enough." Perhaps Mei Su felt that the surroundings were too quiet, so she opened her mouth to break the silence. "I don't need a lot of jade stones now. As for what they are used for, this is a secret. As for mining, I have my own considerations." Zhuowen smiled. His purpose in entering the Death Canyon was to quickly accumulate jade stones by hunting beasts. After accumulating 10,000 jade stones, he would ask the Drifting Cloud tribe to recommend him to enter the Hongxian Divine City. However, after meeting Mei Su and Jiang Yi, entering the God City became easier than eating a meal for him. He did not need to deliberately collect jade stones. The reason he wanted to find the jade stones hidden in the depths of the canyon was mainly for the mysterious stone. Since absorbing the jade stones of the Tianyi tribe, the mysterious stones seemed to have been enlightened. He guessed that the mysterious stone had been in a deep slumber before, but the jade stones could awaken it. Of course, although the mysterious stone could move now, he could feel that it had not fully awakened. Moreover, the mysterious stone's desire for jade stones was getting stronger. Most of the jade stones collected by Xiong Fei and the others were kept in Zhuan's macro world. Originally, he wanted to use these jade stones to enter the Divine City. Since Jiang Yi had promised to let him enter the Divine City, he did not need to keep them. Therefore, he gave all the jade stones in the macro world to the mysterious stone. The mysterious stone sheared and absorbed all the jade stones in the macro world. After absorbing all the jade, the mysterious stone was still not satisfied. It wanted to absorb even more jade. This shocked Zhuan. He had thousands of jade stones in his great world, and they had all been absorbed by the mysterious stone. However, the mysterious stone was not satisfied. Zhuan knew that if he wanted to satisfy this mysterious stone, he would need a large amount of jade stones. Meisu had mentioned that there was a jade or vein in the depths of the canyon, which was perfect for the mysterious stone to absorb. Zhuan had a premonition that if he could let the mysterious stone absorb enough energy, it would be able to reveal the true face of the stone. When Meisu saw that Zhuan didn't want to talk about it, she could only give an "oh" and didn't want to talk about it any further. She had entered the Death Canyon for the Jade Stone Vein, and she had no doubts about Zhuan's strength. That was why she was willing to point out the exact location of the Jade Stone Vein for Zhuan and go deep into the Death Canyon. The two of them traveled through the canyon for a period of time. Finally, they felt that something was wrong. Along the way, the canyon was too quiet. They didn't even see a trace of a killer beast. All of this was very strange. We have reached the deepest part of the canyon. Zhuan stopped and looked at the towering rock wall in front of him. This was the end of the canyon. Apart from this rock wall, there was nothing else around them. Not even a trace of a killer beast could be seen. Miss Meisu, can you sense the location of the Jade Stone Vein now? A trace of haze flashed in Zhuan's eyes. He felt that something was wrong. As for what was wrong, he couldn't tell. He could only ask Meisu about the location of the Jade Stone Vein. Meisu's 3 furry tails swayed gently. Her pair of beautiful eyes looked around as she observed the surrounding environment. Soon, her eyes locked on to the front left. There stood an irregular stone pillar that was half the height of a person. Brotherswa, the Jade Stone Vein should be under this stone pillar. Meisu came to the front of the stone pillar. A trace of excitement flashed in her beautiful eyes. Be careful, Zhuan shouted and took a step forward. He grabbed Meisu's jade-like hand and forcefully pulled her over. Meisu screamed and jumped into Zhuan's arms. Her eyes fell on the stone pillar. She found that the stone pillar had turned into a giant python covered in rocks. To be more precise, the stone pillar was the giant python in disguise. The giant python's body was as thick as a bucket. Its huge head opened its scarlet eyes and stared at Zhuan. Its mouth was wide open as if it was angry at Zhuan for being a busybody. Zhuan's eyes were solemn. The giant python's aura was very strong. It had the strength of an early-stage creator. Zhuan naturally didn't care about such strength. What he was concerned about was that there might be more than one rock python in the deepest part of the Death Canyon. Whoosh! The giant python hissed and shot out like spring. It swept toward Zhuan. A fishy wind swept over. You're courting death. Zhuan grunted coldly as his right hand emitted a crystalline and translucent glow, and he suddenly stretched out his hand to grab the enormous python that flashed over. The power of the Pangu's sacred body poured out. The giant python screamed, and its head was crushed by Zhuan's palm. Big brother Zhua, look, there's a cave where the giant python was just now, Meisu suddenly said. Only then did Zhuo notice that the place Meisu had pointed out was indeed a cave that led to the depths of the underground. The size of the cave was just enough to accommodate a person. The giant python coiled its body and covered the cave, so they didn't notice it for a while. Go in. The moment the cave appeared, Zhuo immediately carried Meisu, who didn't know what was going on, and rushed into the cave. The moment Zhuo entered the cave, He immediately took out the arrayed disc he had prepared from the great world and placed it at the entrance of the cave. The arrayed disc was set up by Zhuowen before he entered the Death Canyon. It was a peak creator-level defensive array. He had spent a lot of effort to set up. Bang, bang, bang. The moment Zhuowen placed the arrayed disc at the entrance of the cave, a series of crashing sounds came from the entrance. It was as if there were countless creatures installed on the arrayed disc. If Zhuowen and Mei Su saw the scene outside the cave, they would definitely feel their scalps go numb. The rocks on both sides of the cave, which was 10 kilometers away, were squirming. Then, giant pythons with scarlet eyes appeared one after another. These giant pythons were exactly the same as the giant pythons Zhuowen had just killed. Zhuowen didn't expect that the walls on both sides of the canyon were actually the giant pythons in disguise. Roar. Chapter 31-39. King Snake Rumble. The rock walls on both sides collapsed with a loud rumble. Then an unprecedentedly terrifying giant python rushed out from the rock walls on both sides. The size of these two giant pythons far exceeded the countless wriggling pythons around them. Each python was thousands of feet long, and their surface was as hard as a rock, especially their necks. They had huge, semicircular wings on their backs, making them look like larger versions of king cobras. The appearance of these two pythons silenced all the other rock pythons in the valley. They stopped squirming and lay on the ground, motionless as a sign of submission. These two pythons were clearly the leaders of the countless rock pythons. They were the true king snakes. Hiss! The two king snakes walked side by side, and the rock pythons in front of them made way for them. Finally, the two king snakes arrived at the entrance of the cave that Zhuowen had entered. At the entrance, there was a sparkling stream of light. It was the creation-grade defensive array that Zhuowen had set up the moment he entered the cave. Around the stream of light, there were bloodstains and many rock pythons' corpses. It was clear that many rock pythons had crashed into the array the moment they tried to drill into the cave. Their heads were broken and bleeding, and some had even died. The two king snakes stopped at the entrance of the cave, and their scarlet eyes stared at the stream of light. Rumble! One of the king snakes dashed out, and its huge head collided with the stream of light. Suddenly, the stream of light fluctuated violently, but the king snake's head, which was covered with hard scales, remained unscathed. The king snake raised its head, and the other king snake dashed out like lightning, also using its head to attack the array. Bang! 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 Next, the two king snakes took turns attacking. The array shook violently, and the stream of light on the surface of the array began to dim. Inside the cave, on the other side of the array, Zhuowen and Mei Su's faces were not looking good. The aura of these two king snakes is terrifying. It's even more terrifying than the devil ape leader. Are these two king snakes Skirich master killer beasts? Mei Su's pretty face was pale as she asked worriedly. These two king serpents are not transcending heaven-slaying beasts, but half-step transcending heaven-slaying beasts. However, the two of them are extremely well-coordinated. If the two of them were to attack together, they would definitely be able to fight against an early-stage heavenly master. Zhuowen's eyes were gloomy. These two king snakes were very difficult to deal with. Moreover, if they continued to bombard the array like this, the array wouldn't be able to last much longer. Brother Zhuowen, what should we do now? Mei Su asked nervously as she looked at Zhuowen. Don't worry. So what if the formation is broken? It's just two half-step heaven-span king snakes. They can't do anything to me. Let's go deeper and find the jade or vein first. Zhuowen's gaze was calm. With his strength, he was indeed not afraid of killing beasts that were half a step into the heavenly path. In addition, he could replenish heavenly path energy at any time. Even if he were to face those two king serpents head-on, Zhuowen would not be afraid. Mei Su looked at Zhuowen's calm eyes. For some reason, she felt at ease. She nodded gently and looked at the dark passage below. She said with certainty, Brother Zhuo, the jade or vein is below. I can feel that the jade or vein below is very large. It's definitely a million-grade jade or vein. Okay, then let's go down. Zhuowen pulled Mei Su and went straight into the depths of the cave. They kept going down, completely ignoring the king snakes that were still bombarding the array. The two of them went all the way down. After about an hour, they reached the end of the passage. Walking out of the passage, Zhuowen found that they were in a huge, open space. The surroundings were emitting a green light. He looked around and narrowed his eyes. He clearly saw the source of the green light. It was emitted by the jade ores embedded in the surrounding rock walls. These jade ores were completely different from the jade ores inside the bodies of the killing beasts. The surface was extremely rough and was basically made up of dozens or even hundreds of jade ores stuck together. Moreover, the surface was covered by rocks. Zhuowen looked ahead and found that there was a huge and spacious passage ahead. The passage was very deep, and he couldn't see the end. On both sides of the passage, there were countless jade ores that were emitting a mysterious green light. Someone must have mined this passage. However, the goal of the person who mined it wasn't the jade ores, but something in the depths of this passage. Zhuowen could tell at a glance that this passage was man-made. Moreover, the jade ores in the surroundings were basically untouched. He had many guesses in his mind. This is definitely the largest jadestone mine I've ever seen. I really didn't expect that there would be such a large jadestone mine in Death Canyon. If our Hongxian Divine City could obtain this jadestone mine, then Mother wouldn't have to worry about the lack of jadestone. Mei Su looked at the jade ores that were emitting a green light. Her beautiful eyes were filled with unprecedented joy. Zhuowen took out the beast bone array disc and set up a creation-grade defensive array at the end of the passage. Zhuowen had observed the surrounding soil. It was obviously much tougher than the soil in Death Valley. Even if the two king serpents above attacked with all their might, they might not be able to destroy the soil. In addition, the passage leading to the bottom was too narrow. The two king serpents definitely wouldn't be able to enter. Only the small rock pythons would be able to enter. The small rock pythons were ordinary in strength. It was unlikely that they would be able to break through the creation-grade defensive array that he had just set up. Let's go. Let's take a look ahead. Zhuowen's eyes were solemn. He pulled Mei Su and walked deeper into the passage. Not long after Zhuowen left, piles of rock pythons swarmed over from the end of the passage like rain. However, these rock pythons were quickly blocked by the defensive array at the end of the passage. They piled up in the passage like a black torrent. 2/3 of Death Valley, Jiangyi, Xiongfei, and the others had noticed the two king serpents the moment they appeared. Although they were quite far from the depths, the two king serpents were too big. They couldn't help but notice them. What terrifying killing beasts! Are these two king serpents monsters at the level of heaven-reaching master? Xiongfei's pupils shrank. The moment he saw the killing beasts, he trembled. His knees went soft, and he almost knelt down. Jiang Ye's eyes were full of worry. He knew that these two terrifying king serpents must have been lured out by Zhuowen and Mei Su. He didn't care about Zhuowen's safety at all. He only cared about Mei Su's safety. However, Jiang Ye didn't dare to rush over. The two king serpents were even more terrifying than the devil ape leader. He would be courting death if he went over. Suddenly, the two king serpents turned their heads and looked at Jiang Ye. Immediately, one of the king serpents darted over like lightning, intending to kill them all. Run. Chapter 3140. Crimson Moon Wave Milk. The king snake was very fast. In less than 10 breaths of time, it had covered 1/3 of the canyon. Bang! However, the moment the king snake reached 2/3 of the canyon, it immediately crashed into the defensive array. The king snake was dizzy from the impact, and its huge snake body was pushed back by the recoil. Let's go. We can't stay here for long. At this moment, Jiang Yi and the rest had already escaped to the edge of the array. Seeing that the array had blocked the king snake, they were delighted. However, they did not dare to delay and fled with all their might. After the king snake had completely destroyed the array, it could no longer see the figures of the foreign races. It was completely enraged. The foreign races that it regarded as ants had actually escaped from under its nose. It could not stand it. Therefore, it suddenly rushed out and chased after them again. This time, it must completely exterminate the foreign races to vent its anger. However, the king's serpent had just destroyed a defensive formation when it crashed into another one after flying for a short distance. This time, it crashed even harder. It was so hard that it saw stars and almost fainted. The king snake was furious. It swung its huge tail and spent a lot of effort to destroy the second array. But then, the king snake crashed into the defensive array one after another. In the end, the king snake roared angrily but did not dare to chase after them. It was scared by the array. After Jiang Yi and the others escaped from the canyon, they looked at the pitch-black canyon behind them with fear and trepidation in their hearts. This time, it's all thanks to Master Zhuo's array. If it wasn't for those arrays, we might not have been able to come back. Xiong Fei sat on the ground. Thinking about the terror of the king's snake, he felt a wave of fear. He was even more grateful to Zhuowen. The beastmen behind Xiong Fei nodded like chicks pecking at rice. After surviving the calamity, they were even more grateful to Zhuowen, who had set up the formation. Jiang Ye's expression was complicated. He approved of Zhuowen's actions in setting up the array. He also had a whole new level of respect for Zhuowen. However, he was very depressed because Meisu had been tricked by Zhuowen. He did not know whether she was dead or alive. Drip, drip, drip. The clear sound of water dripping could be heard from the front of the tunnel. Zhuowen stopped in his tracks. When he saw the scene in front of him, he was stunned. He and Meisu walked in the passageway for half a day and finally reached the end of the passageway. At the end of the passageway was a stone chamber that wasn't too small. And in this stone room, the most conspicuous thing was the pool in the center. The pool took up half of the stone room. The pool was filled with milky white liquid. However, the surface of the pool reflected a crimson crescent moon, and around the crescent moon were bright stars. In the slaughter heavenly domain, spirit sense was forbidden. No one could use it, and Zhuowen was no exception. However, the Panga banner was an exception. It was an item of Pangu, a supreme treasure that had existed since the beginning of the starry sky. If Zhuowen used the power of the Panga banner, his spirit sense could be condensed to a terrifying level. However, it would be very harmful to the spirit. Zhuowen rarely used the Panga banner to condense his spirit sense. But now, the whirlpool on the left side of the Scarlet Moon Stellar Milk Pool gave him a very dangerous feeling. He had to use his soul consciousness to check the situation of the whirlpool. Otherwise, he wouldn't dare to enter the stone room to take the Scarlet Moon Stellar Milk. A golden light flashed between Zhuowen's eyebrows. Then, a gust of spirit sense swept out from between his eyebrows. The moment his spirit sense swept out, Zhuowen pulled out another jade stone from the wall and threw it into the stone room. The whirlpool appeared again, sweeping out the same gust of wind and sweeping the jade stone into the whirlpool. At this moment, Zhuowen's spirit sense shot out like lightning and entered the whirlpool. The moment his spirit sense entered the whirlpool, Zhuowen saw a figure sitting cross-legged inside. The figure was a green skeleton. The green skeleton sat quietly with its legs crossed. Its body contained an ancient and powerful aura that slowly spread out like a sea of clouds. Chapter 3141. Epiphany. Zhuowen's eyes were filled with bewilderment. He actually sensed an ancient aura from the green skeleton that was similar to that of the green-furred corpse he encountered in the Eight Heavens. This aura was very unique. Only powerful existences that had existed for an extremely long time could emit such an aura. Zhuowen wasn't sure whether the green skeleton had fallen or not. His spiritual sense had entered the whirlpool for too short time. He had only glanced at it once, so he wasn't able to clearly see the state of the green skeleton. Zhuowen threw another jade stone into the stone room, and the whirlpool appeared again. This time, Zhuowen was familiar with it, and his divine sense penetrated the whirlpool like lightning. Then, he rushed toward the green skeleton. When Zhuowen approached the green skeleton, he discovered the source of the strange wind that swept out from the whirlpool. Inside the left sternum of the green skeleton, a green heart was still beating, but it was beating very slowly. Every time the heart beat, a strong wind with a strong suction force swept out. The absorbed jade stones entered the vortex and entered the heart, becoming a part of the heart's energy. Thinking about how he had almost been sucked in by the astral wind, Zhuowen could not help but break out in a cold sweat. If his entire body was sucked into the whirlpool, would he also become a part of this strange heart? As the whirlpool closed, a trace of blood leaked out from the corner of Zhuowen's mouth. His face was pale. With the power of the Panga banner, he had forcibly used his divine will twice, which had caused considerable damage to his divine soul. Brother Zhuo, are you all right? Did you use the power of your divine sense just now? Seeing Zhuowen's pale face, Mei Su couldn't help but ask with concern. At the same time, Mei Su recalled the power that had rushed out from Zhuowen's forehead. She was very familiar with that power. It was the power of divine sense. Mei Su couldn't believe it. No one could mobilize their divine sense in the Slaughter Heaven region. Even her mother, who was a master of the sky-reaching realm, couldn't do it. However, this young man was able to do it. At this moment, Mei Su felt that Zhuowen was even more mysterious and powerful, and the worship in her heart grew stronger. I'm fine. Just now, I used a secret method to use the power of my divine sense. However, I had to pay a great price. Zhuowen shook his head and continued. The whirlpool just now was actually a micro-world, and there was a skeleton in that micro-world. That skeleton was very strange. It seemed to be dead, but there was a beating heart in its chest. The astral wind that swept out from the whirlpool was generated by the heart. Brother Zhuo, we don't need this Scarlet Moon stellar starwave milk. The owner of that skeleton is most likely an extremely powerful existence. He might be guarding the Crimson Moon stellar wave milk. Mei Su said, just now, when he accidentally entered the stone room, he immediately discovered that the heavenly energy in the stone room was even denser than the tunnel outside, and the source of this pure heavenly energy should be the Crimson Moon stellar wave milk. After all, the Scarlet Moon stellar starwave milk was a divine medicine that was easier for cultivators to absorb and cultivate than the supreme grade heavenly path origin crystals. Moreover, Zhuowen guessed that the green skeleton was using the heavenly energy in the stone chamber to restore itself. It should still be in a state of hibernation. Otherwise, the green skeleton wouldn't have been so quiet when he entered the stone chamber. Of course, if Zhuowen didn't know what was good for him and directly entered the stone chamber to remove the pool of Scarlet Moon stellar starwave milk, he would immediately wake the green skeleton up. Zhuowen guessed that the green skeleton was definitely a master of the sky-reaching realm. Moreover, it wasn't an ordinary master of the sky-reaching realm. If this guy really woke up, it would be a disaster for Zhuowen. He might not be able to defeat this green skeleton. Let's get out of here first. That green skeleton isn't simple. We can't wake it up now. Let's mine all the Scarlet Moon stones here first. Zhuowen nodded and led Mei Su out of the stone chamber. Then, he waved his right hand and took out a black stone. Mei Su's beautiful eyes were filled with confusion when she saw Zhuowen take out the stone. She didn't know why Zhuowen took it out. Moreover, Mei Su also noticed that although the stone looked ordinary, when she looked at it, she felt like she was looking at a spiritual creature. It was as if the thing in front of her wasn't a cold stone, but a spiritual pet. Remember, you can only absorb half of the reserves in this mineral vein. You can't absorb more than that. Do you understand? Under Mei Su's strange gaze, Zhuowen was actually lecturing the stone in his hand, as if he was educating a child. Then, Zhuowen let go of his right hand. The surface of the stone emitted a faint light and suddenly swept out. Mei Su was shocked to find that wherever the stone passed, the surrounding emerald stones embedded in the rock wall were all dimmed and turned into dust. The energy in the Scarlet Moon stones was actually absorbed by the stone in an instant. This mineral vein was really big. He roughly estimated that there were more than 2 million Scarlet Moon stones in this mineral vein. Half of the mineral vein was more than 1 million Scarlet Moon stones. With so many Scarlet Moon stones and their quality, it should be enough to satisfy the mysterious stone, right? Zhuowen silently watched the mysterious stone's movements but he was not confident. Big Brother Joie, this, Meisu, on the other hand, was dumbfounded. What kind of stone did Zhuowen take out? It was simply a glutton. It actually absorbed all the jade stones within a few hundred meters in such a short time and continued to move forward. I obtained this stone by accident. I don't know its origin, but this thing is very useful to me. Absorbing the scarlet moonstones can help it recover. This time, I was determined to find the scarlet moonstone vein, mainly because of this stone. Zhuowen finished speaking and followed behind mysterious stone with Meisu. Although Meisu was simple, she was not stupid. She knew that this thing was related to Zhuowen's secret, so she wisely did not continue to ask. When Zhuowen reached the middle of the tunnel, Zhuowen immediately ordered the mysterious stone to stop. The mysterious stone was constantly flying in the tunnel, reluctantly shaking at the scarlet moonstones in front of it. Zhuowen did not care about the mysterious stone's thoughts and grabbed it in his hand. The moment he grabbed the stone, a mysterious energy was transmitted from the stone. At this moment, the mysterious stone surface seemed to have undergone some kind of transformation. The surface of the stone, which was originally as black as coal, was now covered with neat and mysterious patterns. Zhuowen's eyes immediately revealed a look of understanding. He knew that the mysterious stone was reciprocating its gratitude, allowing him to enter into an epiphany. Chapter 31:42.12 Divine Fiends Formation. When Meisu saw Zhuowen sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed, she knew that Zhuowen was in a state of epiphany. Therefore, she did not disturb Zhuowen. Instead, she sat quietly to one side to protect Zhuowen. At this moment, Zhuowen was in an extremely profound state of comprehension. He formed hand seals with both hands, and the traces of formations surged out from his hands. They appeared as streaks of light in the air, which seemed resplendent and varied. At the same time, Zhuowen took out the true record of elixir arrays from the macro world and flipped open the chapter on formations. He kept flipping through the contents. This epiphany was a rare opportunity, so he chose to continue comprehending formations. In the Slaughter Heaven domain, formations were obviously more useful than elixir arts. As long as he could improve his formation skills to the heavenly passage level through this epiphany, he was confident that he could take away the crimson moon stellar wave milk in the stone chamber deep in the mineral vein. No matter how strong the green skeleton was, it could not break through the heavenly passage level formation in a short time. Time slowly passed. Zhuowen's hands constantly moved in the air, forming complicated seals. Gradually, the outline of a powerful array formation began to form around him. Although the formation only had an outline, the aura it emitted was becoming more and more terrifying and powerful. The moment Meisu saw the outline of the formation, her beautiful eyes could not help but shrink into needles. Meisu's origin was not ordinary. She was from the Nine-Tailed Fox clan, one of the top 10 clans in the primitive heaven domain. Since she was young, she had been exposed to a lot of high-level knowledge and knew many high-level formations and divine medicines. She was somewhat familiar with the formation that Zhuowen was setting up. She had never seen the real formation, but she had seen the description and pattern of this formation in the ancient books in her mother's study. She also remembered the rough outline of the formation. This formation was called the 12 Divine Fiends Formation, a genuine heavenly passage level-killing formation. The 12 Divine Fiends Formation was very famous in the primitive heaven domain because it was jointly created by the 12 ancestral sorcerers. The principle of the formation was extremely complicated. Among all the Grand Ascension formations, the 12 heavenly deities killing formation was one of the more famous and powerful killing formations. According to her mother, the 12 heavenly deities killing formation was almost lost in the prehistoric heavenly domain. Even if it was not lost, no one in the prehistoric heavenly domain could set up a killing formation of this level. This was because there was not a single divine formation master in the entire Eldritch Heaven realm. Even in the Xianmi heavenly domain, it was said that there were only a handful of god formation masters of this level. Mei Su quickly shook her head and stared closely at Zhuowen's movements. She didn't think that Zhuowen could successfully set up the 12 overseer heavenly gods killing array, which was almost lost in the primitive heavenly domain. Zhuowen naturally didn't know what Mei Su was thinking. He had read about the 12 heavenly deities killing array from the True Pill Array records. In the True Pill Array records array formation section, there was very little information on heaven-piercing grand arrays. The 12 Overseer Divine Fiends Grand Array was only one of the few heaven-piercing grand arrays in the array formation section. The reason why he chose the 12 Overseer Divine Fiends Grand Array was because he saw that it was the only heaven-piercing grand array. Since he wanted to obtain the Scarlet Moon Stellar Wave Milk, he naturally had to face the green skeleton. It was naturally impossible to use a defensive array to deal with the green skeleton, so he could only use a killing array. 3 days later, the outline of the array formation around Zhuowen was completely clear. With Zhuowen as the center, the area within a radius of 1,000 meters was completely covered by a blood-red boundary. At the edge of the blood-red boundary, there was a blood-red giant standing in each of the 12 directions. Each giant had a different body shape, but they were all filled with terrifying killing intent and powerful aura. It was as if the 12 giants weren't giants, but 12 unshakable mountains. The shadows of the 12 ancestral shamans. It's really the 12 Overseer Divine Fiends Grand Array. Mei Su retreated from the blood-red boundary. Her beautiful eyes were filled with shock. She had repeatedly doubted that Zhuowen could have set up the 12 Overseer Divine Fiends Grand Array. However, the scene that appeared in front of her was like a slap to her face. Big Brother Zhuo. He's really amazing. Mei Su came back to her senses. Her face was flushed, and she looked at Zhuowen with her beautiful eyes full of stars. At this moment, Zhuowen was still in a state of epiphany. His speed of forming hand seals was getting faster and faster. He looked at the True Alchemy Array record with concentration and seriousness. He was a little nervous and excited. He knew that the 12 Overseer Divine Fiends Grand Array was about to be set up. At this moment, the steps of setting up the array had come to an end. He knew that he had reached the most critical step. Success or failure depended on this. Zhuowen took out the Beast Bone Array disc and began to set up the array foundation. At the same time, he took out piles of supreme-grade Heavenly Law origin crystals from a macro world. After all, the 12 Overseer Divine Fiends Grand Array was a heaven-piercing grand array. Its consumption of Heavenly Law energy was terrifying. When Zhuowen took out enough Heavenly Tao origin crystals, he rapidly formed a seal with both hands, intending to complete the final hand seal. After completing the last hand seal, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, which landed on the array foundation of the 12 Overseer Divine Fiends Grand Array. For a moment, Zhuowen felt that the Grand Array seemed to be alive. That mouthful of blood seemed to have endowed the array with spirituality. Zhuowen stood up. He was standing in the center of the blood-red boundary. 12 giants stood silently at 12 positions at the edge of the barrier, looking down at Zhuo, one who was in the center of the formation. The 12 giants were blood-red, and their faces were blurred. Their real faces could not be seen clearly. However, Zhuowen was able to recognize which ancestral shaman these 12 giants belonged to based on their size. Of course, the 12 ancestral sorcerer were just the shadows of the 12 Overseer Divine Fiends Grand Array. They were not the real ancestral sorcerer. However, even if they were not the real ancestral sorcerer, Zhuowen knew that the shadows of the 12 ancestral sorcerer had extraordinary battle strength. They all had the battle strength of an early-stage heaven-piercing master. Zhuowen flicked his sleeve, sweeping up the formation base of this grand formation and storing it in his great world. The blood-red boundary and the shadows of the 12 ancestral sorcerer also disappeared. Zhuowen looked down at the mysterious stone in his hand and laughed softly. "Little guy, thank you. Otherwise, I wouldn't have reached the heaven-piercing level in the formation Tao so quickly." The mysterious stone emitted a faint light and immediately sent a weak divine thought to Zhuowen. The divine thought mainly expressed that this guy still wanted to continue absorbing the emerald stones and wanted to absorb the remaining half of the mineral vein. Zhuowen smiled bitterly and said, I've already promised them that I'll only take half of the mineral vein. I can't go back on my words. Don't worry, there are other emerald mineral veins in the Slaughter Heaven region. I'll find other mineral veins for you. Chapter 3143. Extracting the Crimson Moon Star Wave Milk. Big Brother Zhua, thank you. I didn't do anything at all, but you're giving me half of the load. Meisu naturally heard Zhuowen's whispers about the mysterious stone and was moved. She walked up to Zhuowen and bowed deeply. Why are you being so polite? If it weren't for Miss Meisu, I wouldn't have been able to find this jade stone load. We've already agreed that we'll split the jade stone load in half. Zhuowen smiled. Meisu nodded. She was even more grateful to Zhuowen. Meisu, I'll clear a path for you. Then you can leave Death Canyon and meet up with Uncle Jiang and the others. You don't have to wait for me. Just return to the Divine City and gather the people there to mine the remaining jade stone load. Zhuowen suddenly looked at Meisu with a solemn expression. Big Brother Zhua, are you planning to stay and retrieve the Crimson Moon Star Wave milk? Meisu thought of something, and her pretty face changed slightly. She continued, although you've arranged the 12 Divine Fiends formation, you also said that the green skeleton in the whirlpool is a very powerful existence. It's at least at the level of a sky-piercing master. Even with the 12 Divine Fiends formation, it's still very dangerous. Why don't you follow me back to the Divine City? I'll ask my mother to come over and help you retrieve the Crimson Moon Star Wave milk. Zhuowen shook his head and said, This Crimson Moon Star Wave milk is very important to me. I must retrieve it as soon as possible. Moreover, the green skeleton is in a deep slumber. It's currently using the energy of the Crimson Moon Star Wave milk to recover from its injuries. The longer this drags on, the stronger the green skeleton will become. At that time, it'll be more difficult to retrieve the Crimson Moon Star Wave milk. Meisu saw that Zhuowen was insistent and didn't try to persuade him anymore. She only reminded Zhuowen to be careful and not to push himself too hard. Then, Zhuowen led Meisu to the entrance of the tunnel and soon arrived at the entrance of the lode. At this moment, the tunnel leading to the top was filled with countless rock pythons. However, at the end of the passage, Zhuowen had set up a powerful defensive array, blocking all the rock pythons outside the array. At this moment, the flowing light on the surface of the formation had become much dimmer. It was clear that the impact of the rock pythons on the formation was not small. Zhuowen took out the Ho-Yi Divine Bow again, knocked an arrow on the bowstring, and pulled the bowstring into a full moon. The moment Ho-Yi's godly arrow shot out, he undid the defensive formation, and the countless rock pythons in the tunnel fell down with a clatter. However, before these rock pythons could fall to the ground, they were completely pulverized by the terrifying killing intent emitted by Ho-Yi's divine arrow. Whoosh! Ho-Yi's divine arrow shot into the passageway, bursting with killing intent. None of the rock pythons in the tunnel could withstand the power of Ho-Yi's divine arrow, and all of them died, without leaving behind a corpse. Let's go. Zhuowen pulled Meisu along as they entered the passageway that was covered in blood and flesh. They walked up the passageway. At the top of the passageway, the king snake was still guarding the cave entrance. It was flustered and exasperated, constantly bombarding the cave entrance. Although it had made the cave entrance much larger, the king snake could not penetrate the cave in a short time and enter the depths of the cave because the soil here was too hard. Rumble! The king snake once again smashed its head against the cave entrance. It was at this moment that Ho-Yi's divine arrow broke through countless rock pythons and shot directly into the king snake's head. The Ho-Yi's divine arrow was incomparably sharp and carried with it a shocking killing intent. It drilled into the king snake's head and ran through its slender body. King Snake screamed miserably as its huge body twitched and twisted. Fresh blood sprayed out from King Snake's wounds without any regard for its life, turning into a rain of blood in the canyon. The other King Snake was not far away, completely unaware of what had happened. It hurried to the injured king snake's side, wanting to comfort it. Following the sound of something breaking through the air, a blazing greenish-yellow light directly pierced through the second king snake's vital point. The power of this divine arrow was even more terrifying than the first one. After shooting into the king snake's vital point, it directly exploded. The second king snake did not even struggle before it fell to the ground, lifeless. Zhuowen stood calmly at the cave entrance, holding the Ho Yi's divine bow in his left hand and maintaining the shooting posture. The moment he arrived at the cave entrance, he shot out the second Ho Yi's divine arrow and directly killed the second king snake. Kill it while it's down. Zhuowen took a step forward, his whole body emitting a sparkling light. In an instant, he arrived at the king snake's head, which was in great pain. Clenching his right hand into a fist, he punched Wang Shi's head again and again. The terrifying force was like a thunderous drum being struck between heaven and earth, deafening, shaking the heavens and earth as it rumbled. Zhuowen punched with all his might. Every punch carried supreme power, perfectly displaying the power of the Panga's sacred body at the later stage of the six-star realm. Boom! Zhuowen punched the last time, and the king snake's head directly exploded into a ball of blood. The king snake crashed to the ground, and Zhuowen lightly landed on the ground. The death of the king snake frightened many of the surrounding rock pythons, and they did not dare to approach Zhuowen. Instead, they all fled. Let's go. Zhuowen took Mei Su to the entrance of the canyon. When they arrived at the nearest defensive array that Zhuowen had set up earlier, Zhuowen bid farewell to Mei Su. Brother Zhuo, you must be careful. Mei Su looked at Zhuowen's back as he left. She was worried, and she silently prayed for Zhuowen. After Zhuowen returned to the cave, he went straight to the end of the tunnel. He stopped at the entrance of the stone room and looked at the pool of crimson moon stellar milk. He did not enter the stone room, but took out a piece of green stone and threw it into the stone room. A whirlpool appeared on the left side of the crimson moon stellar milk pool and sucked in the green stone. It was at this moment that Zhuowen took out the beast bone array disc and threw it into the whirlpool. The array disc unfolded, and the entire stone room was suddenly enveloped by a blood-red barrier. At the edge of the barrier, the shadows of the 12 ancestors of sorcerers stood in 12 positions, and a powerful pressure poured down. Zhuowen's eyes flickered, and he lifted his right foot and stepped into the stone room. Suddenly, the whirlpool appeared again, and a gust of wind swept over, rolling Zhuowen up. Zhuowen's entire body erupted with the power of the Pangu's sacred body, and he forcibly resisted the gust of wind. Then he walked step by step toward the crimson moon stellar milk pool. Chapter 3144. Leaving the Death Canyon as the scarlet moon stellar milk in the pool decreased, Zhuowen discovered that the heavenly energy in the stone room was also becoming thinner. After filling nearly 100 jade buckets, Zhuowen discovered that there weren't enough jade buckets in the outside world, but there was still a third of the scarlet moon stellar milk in the pool. Zhuowen didn't care about anything else. He directly used the Devourer King's devouring power to forcibly absorb it into the space of the outside world. He was prepared to let Ghost Plume, In Wuxia, and the others in the outside world use jade bottles to fill the scarlet moon stellar milk. Scarlet moon stellar milk was a heaven-level divine medicine. Apart from being preserved in a special environment, it had to be preserved in a jade container. Otherwise, its powerful medicinal properties would be easily lost. The instant Zhuowen absorbed the last of the scarlet moon stellar milk into the outside world, he felt an extremely vast and terrifying aura awaken in the stone room. In an instant, the entire stone room was filled with that terrifying aura. It was like a surging tide that drowned the entire stone room. That terrifying buoyancy made Zhuowen feel suffocated. How dare you covet this lord's belongings? You're courting death. A voice as loud as a bell resounded throughout the stone room. Shortly after, a human-sized whirlpool appeared on the left side of the pool. A green skeleton walked out of the whirlpool. It was the green skeleton that Zhuowen had seen in the whirlpool space with his divine sense. When he first saw the green skeleton, it was sitting cross-legged, so he didn't have any concept of its height. But now that the green skeleton stood up and appeared in front of him, Zhuowen discovered that although the green skeleton was only a skeleton, it was abnormally tall. It was at least 3 feet tall. Zhuowen stomped his right foot and quickly retreated. "Where do you think you're going?" The green skeleton was flustered and exasperated. Green flames ignited in its hollow skeleton eyes. It stomped on the ground, bursting out with a wild gale. Rumble. However, the moment the green skeleton rushed out, it was blocked by a blood-red barrier. It only then discovered that its surroundings had been set up in advance by someone. 12 Overseers Divine Wraith Formation. When the green skeleton saw the shadows of the 12 ancestral sorcerers surrounding it, it could not help but take a few steps back, looking extremely shocked. At this moment, Zhuowen had already retreated to the door of the stone room and looked at the green skeleton with fear. "Little guy, you better not do anything stupid. This eat paid a great price to find this crimson moon stellar wave milk. You actually dare to take this seat things? Are you tired of living? If you know what's good for you, you'd better return the crimson moon stellar wave milk to me. I'll pretend that nothing happened and let you leave this place safely." The green skeleton's eyes were burning with a faint green flame. Its voice was slightly anxious as it threatened. Zhuowen looked at the green skeleton coldly and sneered. "If you want it, come and get it yourself. Why do you need me to send it back?" The green skeleton's eyes burst with green flames as it said angrily, "Little brat, you're pissing me off. Do you know the consequences of angering me?" "I don't know and I don't want to know. If you want to take back the crimson moon stellar wave milk, you'll have to break my 12 divine beings' killing formation first." Zhuowen sneered and left the stone room without looking back. The green skeleton looked at Zhuowen's back silently and roared angrily. It had already suffered a very serious injury, and its strength was less than 10%. It was relying on the crimson moon stellar wave milk to recover from its injuries. But now, Zhuowen had taken away all of the crimson moon stellar wave milk and trapped him in the 12 Overseers Divine Wraith Formation. Of course, it had heard of the 12 divine beings killing formation. It was a sky-reaching level formation. The shadows of the 12 ancestral sorcerers that appeared in the formation all had the strength of an early-stage, sky-reaching master. If the green skeleton was at its peak, the 12 divine beings killing formation would not be able to trap it. But now, if it forcibly broke through the 12 divine beings killing formation, it would pay a very heavy price. It was in the formation and did not dare to move at will. "Damn it, damn it, damn it. Don't let me see you. Otherwise, I'll tear you into pieces." The green skeleton was flustered and exasperated. It grabbed at the void with its right hand, and a vortex reappeared. It re-entered the vortex space. The vortex space was an independent small space attached to the stone room. The 12 divine beings killing formation would not affect this space. In the vortex space, the green skeleton came to a valley where cylindrical jade barrels as tall as a person were placed. These jade barrels were twice as big as the ones Zhuowen had taken out before. In the valley, there were hundreds of such jade barrels. "This is the source of the rarest crimson moon stellar wave milk. I've been here for countless years and collected almost all the crimson moon stellar wave milk in this spring. Only the last pool of crimson moon stellar wave milk was left, but it was destroyed by that ant. But it doesn't matter. This crimson moon stellar wave milk should be enough for me to recover by more than half. After I recover, I'll kill that ant." The green skeleton's voice was cold and gloomy. Then, it suddenly waved its right hand, causing over 100 jade buckets in the valley to explode. The crimson moon star wave that contained dense, heavenly energy transformed into a long river that surged into the green skeleton's body. After flying out of the cave, Zhuowen came to the Death Canyon. He looked at the pitch-black cave below him and frowned slightly. He felt a trace of uneasiness in his heart. This was because he found that the 12 divine beings killing formation he had set up in the stone room did not show any signs of being triggered. In other words, the green skeleton watched him leave with the crimson moonstellar wave milk and did not show any signs of breaking the formation to chase after him. That green skeleton didn't show any signs of movement. How strange, Zhuowen frowned slightly. He hesitated for a while, but did not go back to see what was going on with the green skeleton. He was very confident in the 12 divine beings' killing formation. Although the green skeleton was mysterious, its injuries were too severe. It would definitely not be able to break free from the 12 divine beings' killing formation. Zhuowen walked along the canyon and moved forward. Along the way, he would occasionally encounter some scattered killing beasts, which were easily dealt with by him. However, as Zhuowen walked along the canyon, he would set up a creation-level formation every once in a while. With his current Heavenly Master Array Dao, setting up a creation-level formation was a piece of cake for him. He did this just in case. Although most of the killing beasts in the Death Canyon were killed, there was still a small number of them left. The jade or vein was in the deepest part of the canyon. If the God City wanted to mine the ore, they would have to go deep into the canyon. The remaining killing beasts would cause a lot of trouble for the God City cultivators. He set up the formation to solve this problem. It could be considered as Meisu's reward for helping him find the jade or vein and obtaining the crimson moon stellar wave milk. Chapter 31:45. Arriving at Hongxian Divine City, I'm finally out. Zhuowen felt refreshed as he walked out of the Death Canyon. He had gained a lot in the Death Canyon and was in a good mood. Lord Zhuo, you're finally out. Xiong Fei, who had been waiting at the entrance of the canyon for a long time, hurried over when he saw that Zhuowen had finally come out. He was so excited that tears and snot were running down his face. Zhuowen looked at the excited Xiong Fei and the group of elite beastmen behind him and asked, "Have the people from the Divine City left?" Xiong Fei nodded and said, "Yes, they've been gone for a while. But before Miss Meisu left, she asked me to pass this to you. She said that you can enter the Divine City with this token." As he spoke, Xiong Fei passed a white token to Zhuowen. Zhuowen took the white token and immediately recognized it as the Hongxian token that Meisu had taken out. Judging from Jiang Ye's attitude at the time, it was obvious that the Hongxian token was a very important item. After all, the Hongxian token was equivalent to an order from a city lord of the Divine City. Zhuowen didn't expect Meisu to leave the Hongxian token to him. It was obvious that Meisu valued his entry into the Divine City. Of course, Zhuowen also felt Meisu's trust in him. The Hongxian token was very important to Meisu. She was willing to give it to him because she trusted him. Got it. Zhuowen put away the Hongxian token and said to Xiong Fei, "Xiong Fei, give me a map of Hongxian Divine City." Xiong Fei didn't dare to delay. He took out a sheepskin scroll from his sleeve and obediently handed it to Zhuowen. Zhuowen took the sheepskin scroll and unfolded it. After studying it for a while, he realized that Hongxian Divine City wasn't far from the Flowing Cloud tribe. "Xiong Fei, thank you for this. I'll go to Hongxian Divine City immediately. These heavenly Dao origin crystals are your reward." Zhuowen waved his sleeve and took out thousands of supreme-grade heavenly Dao origin crystals from the outside world. He leaped onto the dragon horse and clamped his legs on the horse's belly. The dragon horse neighed and galloped away. "Lord Zhuo, don't you want these jade stones?" Xiong Fei looked at the supreme-grade heavenly Dao origin crystals excitedly. However, he soon thought Zhuowen's dragon horse. He recalled the heavenly Dao origin crystals they had collected in the canyon. Zhuowen, who was riding on the dragon horse, did not answer Xiong Fei. Instead, he threw out a black stone. The mysterious stone flew over and circled around the place where Xiong Fei had placed the jade stone before returning to Zhuowen's side. Xiong Fei and the rest were dumbfounded because the jade stones they had collected had all turned into dust. A day later, Zhuowen rode on his dragon horse and stopped at a desert. He raised his head and looked ahead. 1,000 meters ahead, a huge city appeared in Zhuowen's line of sight like a crouching dragon. This huge city was built with huge pieces of yellow stones, and the city walls alone were over 1,000 feet high. Around the huge city, dense streams of light flickered. Zhuowen could see that these streams of light were traces of an array. In addition, above the huge city, there was a green array pattern that was large enough to cover the entire city. This array pattern constantly overflowed with a green aura that surged into the huge city. Zhuowen looked at the array pattern and knew that it was a huge array that supplied heavenly Tao energy. Because of the existence of this array, the environment in the huge city was the same as the outside world. It was filled with heavenly Tao energy. The cultivators in the huge city could peacefully cultivate and advance. Zhuowen knew that this huge city was Hong Xian Divine City. Zhuowen rode on the dragon horse and continued forward. Soon, they arrived in front of a huge city gate of Hong Xian Divine City. This city gate was made entirely of bronze. On the surface of the city gate, there were many complicated patterns engraved on it, making it look mysterious and ancient. Zhuowen looked at the patterns on the surface of the bronze city gate. He knew that these patterns were array patterns. Moreover, they were of a high grade. Once someone attacked the city gate, the array patterns on the surface of the city gate would be activated. At that time, the array patterns would explode with terrifying energy. Zhuowen stopped in front of the city gate. At this moment, the city gate was tightly shut. On top of the city wall above the city gate, two guards noticed Zhuowen and immediately shouted, "Who are you?" "I'm a friend of Miss Mei Su and Jiang Yi. I am here today because of their invitation." Zhuowen jumped off the dragon horse and shouted at the guards. The two guards looked at each other in confusion. One of them, a tall and thin man, said in a deep voice, "You are a friend of Miss Mei Su and Lord Jiang Yi? Why didn't they mention you?" Hearing this, Zhuowen's face sank. He thought that after Jiang Yi and Mei Su returned to the Divine City, they would greet the guards. Now, it seemed that the two of them did not greet him at all. It seemed that he could only use the Hong Xian token. Zhuowen took out the white token and raised it above his head. "This is the Hong Xian token that Miss Mei Su gave me. She handed it to me personally. Now, do you believe me?" The moment the two guards saw the Hong Xian token in Zhuowen's hand, their faces changed drastically. They looked at Zhuowen with bewilderment. The two guards whispered to each other for a while, glancing at Zhuowen from time to time with strange looks in their eyes. "Wait," the tall and skinny guard said before leaving the city wall. The remaining guard, on the other hand, kept sizing up Zhuowen. His eyes were filled with vigilance and hostility. Zhuowen furrowed his brows. He hadn't heard the whispers of the two guards just now. However, after he took out the Hong Xian token, the two guards' attitudes became unfriendly. Zhuowen had a bad premonition. After a while, the tall and thin guard returned with a young man. This young man was about 10 feet tall and covered in green scales. Zhuowen could tell at a glance that this young man belonged to the Dragon Clan, just like Jiang Yi. However, this young man's strength was obviously inferior to Jiang Yi's. From the aura he exuded, he was probably only at the early stage of the Creator Realm. However, this young man should be a junior. His talent was not bad since he could cultivate to the early stage of the Creator Realm. "You said you're a friend of Mei Su and Uncle Jiang?" The young man stood on the city wall and looked down at Zhuowen with cold and merciless eyes. "Yes. Did Miss Mei Su and Uncle Jiang not mention me when they returned?" Zhuowen asked with a frown. "Returned? Huh." The young man revealed a cold smile and continued. "I heard from the guards that you took out the Hong Xian token just now. Toss the Hong Xian token to me and see if it's real." Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. He felt that something was wrong and asked coldly, "Did something happen between Miss Mei Su and Uncle Jiang?" I said, "Throw the Hong Xian token to me. You have no right to ask me questions." Chapter 3146. The young man from the Dragon Tribe raised his head and looked coldly at the young man from the Dragon Tribe. "The Hong Xian token belongs to Miss Mei Su. Unless she comes out personally and I hand it to her, no one else has the right to make me hand it over." The young man from the Dragon Tribe stared coldly at Zhuowen and suddenly laughed. "Are you still putting on an act in front of me? Meisu and Uncle Jiang were ambushed by the people from the Dark Rock Divine City because of you. Otherwise, how could something as precious as the Hongxian token appear in your hands? The young man from the dragon tribe shouted, Men, take down this spy at the city gate. Rumble. The bronze city gate slowly opened, and nearly 100 cavalrymen in heavy armor appeared behind the gate. They glared at Zhuowen fiercely. The cavalrymen quickly rushed out and surrounded Zhuowen. Zhuowen frowned as he looked at the cavalrymen around him. He was confused. However, from the words of the young man from the dragon tribe, he knew that Mei Su and Jiang Yi had not returned to Hongxian Divine City. Instead, they had been captured by the people from the Dark Rock Divine City. It was no wonder that the guards did not know that he had come to Hongxian Divine City. Moreover, he was suspected when he took out the Hongxian token. If I were a spy, do you think I would walk right into your trap and come to Hongxian Divine City and even stupidly take out the Hongxian token and show it to you? Zhuowen stood calmly on the spot, and his tone was terrifyingly calm. The cavalrymen surrounding Zhuowen looked at each other. They had obviously thought of the same thing and were hesitant about whether they should make a move. The young man from the dragon tribe sneered. He took a step forward and jumped off the city wall. The powerful impact caused the ground to tremble slightly. You happen to be planning to use such a trick to confuse us and make us suspicious. Unfortunately, this little trick of yours is completely useless against me. What are you waiting for? Take down this spy. The young man from the dragon clan ordered the cavalry in front of him coldly. The young man from the dragon race had a high status in the Hongxian Divine City, and the 100 or so cavalrymen did not dare to disobey him. The long spears in their hands flew toward Zhuowen. However, these cavalrymen knew when to stop. They did not aim for Zhuowen's vital points. Instead, they aimed for Zhuowen's limbs. Clearly, they intended to cripple Zhuowen and capture him alive. Ding, ding, ding. What happened next shocked all the cavalrymen surrounding Zhuowen. Their spears had indeed pierced into Zhuowen's limbs, but the moment their spear tips touched the surface of Zhuowen's body, they produced a clear clanging of metal. Their spears were actually unable to harm this person's body. How is that possible? How can this person's physical body be so terrifying? Our weapons are completely useless against him. All the cavalrymen were shocked. They couldn't help but retreat. Unfortunately, Zhuowen would not give them any chance to retreat. Zhuowen grabbed all the long spears that were aimed at him with both hands. Then, he exerted force with both hands. A terrifying force exploded, and all the long spears that were caught by him exploded into countless wood shavings. The cavalrymen screamed in pain as they were sent flying. The young man from the dragon clan watched as the countless cavalrymen were sent flying. The figure standing in the middle was like a demon god, standing tall and firm. Then, the young man from the dragon clan realized that the figure had turned around and was looking at him coldly. That pair of eyes was filled with killing intent and brutality. It made his scalp tingle. You've got guts. How dare you touch the cavalrymen of the Hongxian Divine City? Are you tired of living? The young man from the dragon clan said in a frightened voice as he slowly retreated. I am indeed tired of living. However, it's not that I'm tired of living. I'm tired of waiting for a piece of trash like you to get your ass in front of me and kowtow. Zhuowen's voice was calm, but terrifying killing intent exploded from his body. He slowly stepped out with his right foot and walked toward the young man from the dragon clan. Do you really think I'm afraid of you? You're just an eternal overlord trash. How dare you threaten me to get my ass in front of you and kowtow? You're daydreaming. The young man from the dragon clan was enraged. He was a top genius of the younger generation in the Hongxian Divine City, but now he was being looked down upon by an eternal overlord trash. Given his pride, how could he swallow this insult? Boom! The young man from the dragon clan no longer retreated. Instead, he took a step forward and fully unleashed the aura of an early-stage creator. Terrifying gusts of wind swept out around the young man from the dragon clan, causing his hair to flutter in the absence of wind. He looked elegant and dashing. The young man from the dragon clan flashed and flew toward Zhuowen. His right hand clenched into a fist and punched out, creating a muffled explosion. Bang! The young man from the dragon clan punched Zhuowen in the chest and laughed maniacally. An eternal overlord is indeed an eternal overlord. In front of me, the creator, you're just trash and a joke. But soon, the young man from the dragon clan realized that something was wrong. Zhuowen was still standing in front of him and hadn't been sent flying by the force of his punch. He was as immovable as a mountain. So this is your full-strength attack? It's as soft as a woman's. Zhuowen looked indifferently at the young man from the dragon clan, a cold smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. The young man from the dragon clan's pupils shrank to the size of needles. His legs felt weak. That was indeed his full-strength attack. His full-strength attack should have been enough to blast this person to smithereens, but in reality, this person was standing in the same spot without moving an inch. His body was as hard as steel, and there wasn't even a scratch on his chest. How is this possible? The young man from the dragon clan couldn't be any more shocked. He unconsciously retreated. Unfortunately, the moment he retreated, a vicious slap landed on his cheek. The terrifying strength of the slap caused the dragon youth's face to swell up. He spat out a mouthful of blood mixed with broken teeth as he fell to the ground. Then, Zhuowen stomped on the young man's head, causing his face to sink into the mud. The surrounding cavalrymen got up one after another. They had planned to charge at Zhuowen again, but when they saw this scene, they were all dumbfounded. The young man from the dragon clan had always been a powerful existence in their hearts. Apart from the experts of the older generation, he was almost invincible. But now, the young man from the dragon clan was actually stomped on by this young man. This was too unbelievable. Did I say you should retreat? Zhuowen's calm and terrifying voice sounded. To the young man from the dragon clan, this voice was like the voice of a messenger from hell. It was so terrifying that it made his heart palpitate. Now kneel in front of me and apologize for your rudeness. Chapter 31:47. Great Guardian in Jia humiliation flashed across the Dragon Tribe youth's eyes as he growled. Do you know who I am? Do you know where you are? This is Hongxian Divine City. How dare you behave so atrociously and act so impudently in front of me? Did I ask you to spout nonsense? Zhuowen pressed the tip of his right foot against the Dragon Tribe youth's abdomen and lifted him up. He then lifted his right foot and kicked the Dragon Tribe youth body. Instantly, the Dragon Tribe youth coughed out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. He was hit so hard that he saw stars and vomited blood. It was as if he was about to vomit out his internal organs. Do you think that I won't dare to kill you because this is Hongxian Divine City? The killing intent in Zhuowen's eyes grew increasingly intense, as if it had materialized. The Dragon Tribe youth was truly frightened when he felt the killing intent. His body trembled and his lips trembled. He finally experienced the ruthlessness of this young man, especially the terrifying killing intent. He did not doubt that if he did not do as this young man said, he would really be killed by this young man. I know I was wrong. The Dragon Tribe youth hurriedly got up and knelt on the ground. He kowtowed to Zhuowen as his knees trembled. What's going on? Just as the Dragon Tribe youth was kneeling in front of Zhuowen and apologizing, a middle-aged man walked out of the city gates. Behind the middle-aged man were thousands of cavalrymen. The middle-aged man had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. He looked like a human, but upon closer inspection, the middle-aged man's hair was snow-white, and there were 8 grayish-white fox tails behind him. The moment he saw the middle-aged man, Zhuowen knew that he was from the nine-tailed fox tribe. Moreover, he was from a nine-tailed fox tribe that had 8 tails. Meisu had told him about the nine-tailed fox tribe before. It was said that the strength of this tribe was reflected by the number of tails they had. The nine-tailed fox tribe was the strongest and stood at the top of the nine-tailed fox tribe. Since this man had 8 tails, his strength must be terrifying. Great Guardian Jia. The Dragon Tribe youth turned around. The moment he saw the middle-aged man, he was overjoyed and wanted to get up. Unfortunately, the moment he stood up, Zhuowen raised his right foot and stomped on the young man's face, crushing him under his foot. Did I allow you to get up? Zhuowen's cold voice slowly sounded. Everyone was shocked. Even a middle-aged man was dumbfounded. Wasn't this young man a little too arrogant? Great guardianing Jia was right in front of him, yet he had mercilessly stepped on a young man's face. Wasn't this a slap in the face? The Dragon Clan youth twisted his body in humiliation. His heart was filled with shock and anger. Ing Jie's position in Hongxian Divine City was second only to the City Lord. He was even higher than the Vice City Lord, Jiang Yi. Moreover, his strength was second only to the City Lord in the Divine City. Among the countless tribes in the Hongxian Divine City, he was well known. In the Dragon Tribe youth's opinion, this person should restrain himself after hearing the title of Great Guardian Ing Jie. However, not only did Great Guardian Ing Jie not restrain himself, Great Guardian Ing Jie stepped on him even more viciously than before. Wasn't he afraid of Great Guardian Ing Jie? Great Guardian Ing Jie's face turned ugly. He looked coldly at Zhuowen and said, "Sir, are you here to cause trouble in Hongxian Divine City?" "I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here to look for Miss Mei Su and Uncle Jiang. I'm here to bring a great opportunity to Hongxian Divine City." Unfortunately, the so-called genius of Hongxian Divine City didn't take it seriously and even treated me as a spy. Zhuowen stepped on the Dragon Tribe youth's head with a little more force. The Dragon Tribe youth grimaced in pain and couldn't help but beg for mercy. What a boastful tone. Bringing a great opportunity to Hongxian Divine City? What a joke. Also, Miss Mei Su and Jiang Yi were captured by Dark Rock Divine City. What's your motive for coming here to look for them? Great Guardian Ing Jie said coldly. Zhuowen frowned slightly and said, "Is Dark Rock Divine City one of the 3 divine cities of the Slaughter Heaven region? Why did they capture Miss Mei Su and Uncle Jiang?" Great Guardian Ing Jie looked at Zhuowen strangely. Is there a mistake? Is this guy from the Slaughter Heaven region? How can he not know about Dark Rock Divine City? I order you to release Hao Rue immediately. Otherwise, don't blame me for being merciless. Great Guardian Ing Jie's voice was terrifyingly low. A terrifying aura burst out from his body. Zhuowen's eyelids twitched. Great Guardian Ing Jie was indeed powerful. He was stronger than Jiang Yi and should be at the peak of the half-step Tongtian realm. He was probably not far from breaking through to the Tongtian realm. This guy was rude to me first and hasn't apologized sincerely. How can I let him go? Zhuowen's voice contained an unquestionable meaning, and his tone was very cold. Then you're courting death. Great Guardian Ing Jie was furious. He took a step forward and rushed toward Zhuowen. The thousands of cavalrymen behind Great Guardian Ing Jie stood quietly in place. They were confident in Great Guardian Ing Jie's strength. They knew that as long as Great Guardian Ing Jie attacked, the young man in front of them would be defeated without a doubt. Zhuowen's eyes were filled with endless fighting spirit. Ever since his Panga sacred body had advanced to the late 6th star, he had never truly fought with a half-step Tongtian realm lord like Great Guardian Ing Jie. In the previous few battles, he had used Ho Yi's divine arrow to finish off his opponents in order to end the battle quickly. Good. Zhuowen kicked the young man from the Dragon Clan away. Sparkling light burst out from his body, making Zhuowen look like he was made of glass. Boom! In just an instant, Zhuowen and the Great Protector Ing Jie clashed head-on with each other. A terrifying, explosive sound, like a profound thunder descending from the 9 heavens, exploded on the spot. The terrifying force was like an exploding sea of clouds. It suddenly whistled and swept up a terrifying storm. The cavalrymen around them were swept away by the terrifying aftermath. They were all shocked. Thump! 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 Zhuowen let out a muffled groan and retreated continuously. He retreated nearly 100 steps, leaving behind deep footprints along the way. Great Guardian Ing Jie was also retreating. He retreated 70 or 80 steps until he reached the edge of the city gate. Then he steadied himself. Great Guardian Ing Jie looked at Zhuowen in shock. He couldn't imagine how this guy in front of him, who was only an eternal overlord, could have such terrifying strength. The cavalrymen behind the city gate were equally shocked, as well as the young man from the Dragon Clan who had been kicked around by Zhuowen and was wailing in agony. Only now did he truly understand the terrifying strength of this unfamiliar young man. He could actually fight with great guardian Ing Jie. Was this guy really an eternal overlord? Chapter 31:48. The woman in white. After Zhuowen stabilized himself, he narrowed his eyes and looked at Ing Jie in front of him. He had a general understanding of his own strength. His Pangu's sacred body was at the late stage of 6 stars, which was equivalent to a half-step Tongtian master. Of course, if he relied on his sacred body's terrifying recovery ability, he would be able to fight an early-stage Tongtian master without dying. Again, Zhuowen let out a long howl and took a step forward. His entire body flickered with sparkling and translucent light, and he looked like a man-made glass divine statue. Ing Jie was shocked and angry. Although he was shocked by Zhuowen's strength, he also knew that this person's strength was weaker than his own. Your strength has really shocked me, but you will never be my match. In the end, you will only be trampled under my feet. Ing Jie sneered. His body exploded with terrifying energy ripples as he flew toward Zhuowen. Boom, boom, boom. The two of them fought in an instant. Terrifying shockwaves spread out in all directions like water ripples. The cavalry in front of the city gate had already retreated to the safe zone inside the city gate. The Dragon Clan youth was so scared that he retreated. His eyes were full of fear as he looked at the two people fighting in the sky. He really wanted to slap himself. If he had known that this person's strength was so terrifying, he would never have provoked such an existence. He even suspected that this person was a spy from Dark Rock Divine City. With such strength, he was at least one of the few higher-ups in the Divine City. How could he have the leisure to be a mere spy? Boom! Just as the Dragon Clan youth was letting his imagination run wild, a figure fell to the ground in a sorry state, creating a huge crater. Then he saw Zhuowen climb out of the crater in a sorry state. He let out a sigh of relief. This person's strength was indeed terrifying, but he was still no match for Ing Jie. The Dragon Tribe youth originally thought that Zhuowen would definitely surrender after being suppressed by Great Guardian Ing Jie. However, he did not expect that this fellow was actually not afraid of death. He once again rushed out and engaged in a fierce battle with Great Guardian Ing Jie in midair. As the battle continued, the Dragon youth discovered that Great Guardian Ing Jie seemed to be at a disadvantage. At this moment, Great Guardian Ing Jie's face became more and more solemn and unsightly. He looked at Zhuowen in front of him with bewilderment. Following the continuous battle, his consumption also became greater and greater. If he was in the Divine City, he could recover in time with the supply of heavenly energy. However, there was no heavenly energy outside the city gates. Every time he attacked, he would use up a lot of heavenly energy. Furthermore, he was unable to replenish enough heavenly energy, so the more he fought, the weaker he became. On the other hand, the young man in front of him didn't know what fatigue was, and he maintained his strongest battle prowess at all times. Didn't this guy need to consume the energy of the heavenly Tao to fight? Boom! At the instant Grand Guardian Ing Jie was distracted, Zhuowen seized this opportunity and arrived before Grand Guardian Ing Jie like a bolt of lightning. He raised his right hand and fiercely slapped Grand Guardian Ing Jie's face. Smack! The crisp sound of a slap rang out. Immediately, the cavalrymen of the Divine City were stunned to find that Great Guardian Ing Jie, who was almost invincible in their hearts, had been slapped to the ground by the young man in midair. Moreover, he was in a head-down position. Great Guardian Ing Jie's eyes were filled with humiliation. The moment he fell to the ground, he immediately got up. However, he did not get up to fight with Zhuowen again. Instead, he planned to retreat. Zhuowen clearly saw through Great Guardian Ing Jie's intention. With a wave of his sleeve, he took out a golden rope from the Great World and threw it out. This golden rope was a peak creation level binding divine weapon. Zhuowen had obtained it from an enemy he had defeated in the past. In the past, he rarely used this binding divine weapon, so he rarely used it. Now it just so happened that it came in handy. The rope caught up to Great Guardian Ing Jie at lightning speed and tied him up. The Great Protector Ing Jie had exhausted too much of his heavenly way energy. The reason he had fled was naturally because he wanted to enter the Divine City to recover his heavenly way energy as soon as possible. Unfortunately, Zhuan wouldn't give him the chance. After being bound by the rope, Great Guardian Ing Jie fell to the ground and wriggled continuously, trying to break free. Unfortunately, it was all to no avail. Zhuan came to Great Guardian Ing Jie's side and lifted him up. You are clearly an eternal overlord. How can you be so strong? Also, don't you use up heavenly energy in battle? Great Guardian Ing Jie's face darkened, panic flashing through his eyes. Zhuan inwardly praised Great Guardian Ing Jie's calmness, as expected of someone with a high position in the Divine City. You don't need to know about this. You only need to know that I came to Hongxian Divine City with no ill intentions. It was you who attacked me time and time again. I was only defending myself. Zhuan's voice was low. His battle with Great Guardian Ing Jie was more exhausting than the latter. It was just that he had a great world. Moreover, he could open it freely. When he was fighting with Great Guardian Ing Jie, he was also constantly absorbing the heavenly Tao origin crystals in the Great World. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to defeat an expert like Great Guardian Ing Jie so easily by relying on himself. How dare you? Why haven't you released Great Guardian Ing Jie yet? The Dragon Clan youth shouted at Zhuan. Zhuan could not be bothered with that Dragon Clan youth. Instead, he looked above the city wall and said indifferently, You've been watching there for so long. Aren't you tired? Zhuan's words immediately alerted everyone present. They all subconsciously raised their heads to look at the city wall. They saw a slim and graceful figure standing on the city wall. It was a woman around 30 years old. Her skin was smooth and her face was like a peach blossom. She was dressed in a white veil and looked like a fairy in a painting. She stood aloof from the world and floated like an immortal. This woman's appearance was definitely a rare beauty. In particular, her otherworldly temperament gave people the illusion that she was a true fairy. What caught Zhuan's attention the most was not the woman's stunning appearance, but the 9 white, fluffy tails that extended from her back. Without a doubt, this woman was from the 9-tailed fox clan. Moreover, in Hongxian Divine City, only the City Lord of Hongxian Divine City could possess 9 tails. City Lord. The Dragon Clan youth immediately knelt on one knee. His eyes were filled with devotion and fanaticism. The thousands of cavalrymen in the city gate also knelt down and called out the City Lord's name. Great Guardian Ing Jie struggled continuously, but was firmly held in Zhuan's hand. He could only look at the beautiful woman helplessly. The woman in white did not speak. Her jade-like feet tapped lightly in the void, and she slowly descended from the city gate. However, the moment the woman in white landed in midair, Zhuan's expression changed. The woman in white instantly disappeared on the spot. Then, she brushed past him like a soul. Chapter 3149. Hongxian Tokenjuan stared at the white-robed lady who landed not far away. In that instant, he only saw a flash in front of his eyes. He did not even see the white-robed lady's figure clearly before Ing Jie, who was in his hand, was snatched away by the white-robed lady. Soul ambush. Zhuan's eyes flickered as he guessed the move that the white-robed lady had used. Speaking of which, Meisu had used this move in the Death Canyon before. It had almost teleported into the Purple River where Zhuan was. It had left a deep impression on Zhuan back then. After that, when Zhuan and Meisu entered the depths of the Death Canyon, they had discussed this move. It was then that he knew that this move was called Soul Ambush. It was said that this Soul Ambush was the innate ability of the 9-tailed fox clan. Moreover, the number of times the Soul Ambush could be used was closely related to the number of tails one had. Meisu only had 3 tails, so she could only use Soul Ambush 3 times. The white-robed lady in front of him had also used Soul Ambush, but her technique and power were much more superior than Meisu's. In that instant, Zhuowen could not even catch a glimpse of the white-robed lady's figure. "Thank you, City Lord." The rope on Ing Jie's body fell off, and he quickly bowed to express his gratitude to the white-robed lady. The white-robed lady looked at Ing Jie indifferently and said, "Ing Jie, do you know where you went wrong?" The white-robed lady's voice was crisp and clear like the chirping of an oriole. It was pleasing to the ear, but also slightly cold. Ing Jie hurriedly knelt on the ground. His face was filled with fear, but there was a trace of doubt in his eyes. Obviously, he was puzzled by the white-robed lady's words. The white-robed lady did not say anything else. Instead, she looked at Zhuowen and said, "Little brother, do you have my Hongxian token? I gave it to my daughter, Mei Su. Without her permission, it is impossible for anyone else to obtain it. I believe that you have no ill intentions in coming to Hongxian Divine City. However, to prove your innocence, can you show me the Hongxian token?" Zhuowen nodded and handed the Hongxian token to the white-clothed woman without the slightest hesitation. The Hongxian token might be a good thing for those who wanted to take control of the Hongxian Divine City. They could use the token to obtain the authority of the City Lord 3 times. However, Zhuowen wasn't interested in this at all. His main objective in coming to Hongxian God City was to obtain the exact location of the Forbidden Zone that would allow him to leave the Slaughter Heaven region. The woman in white took a deep look at Zhuowen. She never thought that the Hongxian token, which others could only dream of, would be given to her by this young man just like that. His magnanimity was truly extraordinary. From Zhuowen's performance, she was certain that this person had nothing to do with Mei Su and Jianye's abduction. The Hongxian token was given to me by Miss Mei Su in the Death Canyon. She knew that I wanted to go to the Hongxian God City, but she was afraid that I wouldn't be able to enter. Therefore, she gave me the Hongxian token for the time being. After I enter the Hongxian God City, I will return this token to Miss Mei Su. Following that, Zhuowen gave a brief account of what happened in the Death Canyon. When a woman in white heard that there was a huge jade or vein in the depths of the Death Canyon, her calm expression couldn't conceal her excitement. "You're saying that the jade or vein in the depths of the Death Canyon has at least 2 million jade ores?" The woman in white asked emotionally. "Yes, according to the agreement between Miss Mei Su and I, we will split it evenly. She and I will split it in half. I have already taken half of the mine, and the remaining half has 1 million jadeite stones." Zhuowen nodded. "City Lord, this person's words might not be trustworthy. Who knows if the jade or vein in the Death Canyon was made up by him? It's possible that his objective is to lure us into the Death Canyon to our deaths." Great Guardian Ing Jie said in a deep voice. The woman in white knitted her brows slightly. She had also thought of this point. The Death Canyon was famous for being a dangerous place. There were many slaughter beasts in it. Even if the elite cavalrymen of the Divine City were to attack the Death Canyon by force, they might be able to break through the Death Canyon, but they would suffer heavy losses. I have no reason to lie to all of you. I am a divine master of heaven level. Why would I come all the way here just to lie to all of you? Zhuowen was helpless. He knew that the only way to convince the woman in white was to reveal his identity as a divine master of heaven level. A divine master of heaven level was a sensational existence even in the Xianmi heavenly territory, let alone in the Slaughter Heaven territory where energy was scarce. "What? You are a divine master of heaven level?" The surrounding people were shocked. They looked at Zhuowen in disbelief. The woman in white was so shocked that she blurted it out. She didn't realize that she had lost her composure. "You are bragging. A divine master of heaven level is extremely rare even in the Xianmi heavenly territory. You are so young. How could you be a divine master of heaven level? I think you don't even know the basics of array Dao." The young man from the dragon tribe said disdainfully. The woman in white knitted her brows and looked at Zhuowen with disappointment. Originally, she had admired Zhuowen's previous performance. However, this boastful statement had completely obliterated her good impression of him. Zhuowen ignored the questioning looks of the others. He walked slowly to the bronze city gate and pressed his right hand on the surface of the gate. Suddenly, the countless patterns on the surface of the bronze door lit up, but they soon dimmed completely. Then, the complicated patterns collapsed with a loud bang. The god of creation's staged defensive formation on the bronze gate was instantly broken by Zhuowen. The woman in white looked at Zhuowen in shock. She was starting to believe that Zhuowen could really be a divine master of heaven level. After all, one had to be at least at the creation level to be able to break a divine master of heaven level in an instant. Even if the young man in front of her was not a divine master of heaven level, he was at least at the creation level. There was no divine master of heaven level in Hongxian City. This was because the highest level divine master of heaven level in Hongxian City was only a divine master of heaven level. Immortal Master, I was rude just now. I did not discipline my subordinates well and allowed them to offend you. The woman in white cupped her fists and bowed to Zhuowen. The young man from the dragon tribe and great guardian Jia were also stunned. However, the two of them knew the severity of the situation. They quickly apologized to Zhuowen. Immortal Master, we were wrong. We should not have wronged you for no reason. Zhuowen waved his hand and said, since it was a misunderstanding, let's forget about it. Zhuowen knew that the woman in white had bowed to him and apologized to him because she valued his status as a divine master of heaven level. In the Slaughter Heaven territory, array formations were very important to a huge building like a divine city. Zhuowen was the one and only divine master of heaven level. He should be respected by everyone, including the city lord. Chapter 3150. Forbidden area in the tallest building in Hongxian Divine City. In a spacious meeting room, the white-robed lady sat at the head of the table. Zhuowen sat beside her. Great guardian Jia and the young man from the dragon race sat on the other side. However, from their positions, it could be seen that great guardian Jia and the young man from the dragon race had a much lower status than Zhuowen. After proving his Dao validation level, Zhuowen received everyone's recognition. His status had risen to second only to the white-robed lady. After a round of introductions, Zhuowen finally found out that the white-robed lady's name was Mei Ying. She was Mei Su's birth mother and also the person in charge of Hongxian Divine City. The middle-aged man was the great guardian of Hongxian Divine City. His name was Jia. As for the young man from the dragon race, he was the most talented genius among the younger generation in Hongxian Divine City. His name was Hao Rui. City Lord Mei Ying, Mei Su and Uncle Jiang can be considered as old friends at first sight. They left Death Canyon before me. How could they have been ambushed and kidnapped by the people from Dark Rock Divine City? Zhuowen found it unbelievable. Death Canyon wasn't too far away from Hongxian Divine City. If Mei Su and the others were really ambushed, they would have sent out a signal. If Hongxian Divine City had sent out reinforcements immediately, they would have been able to make it in time to save Mei Su and the others. Mei Ying saw Zhuowen's doubts and said, Dark Rock Divine City has been planning this for a long time. Moreover, the Dark Rock Divine City sent out the Shadow Troop, a troop that specializes in speed. By the time we arrived, the Shadow Troop had already disappeared. The only clue is this letter that the Shadow Troop left for me. Mei Ying took out a letter and passed it to Zhuowen. Zhuowen didn't stand on ceremony. He took out the letter and started reading it. The letter was personally written by the city lord of Dark Rock Divine City, Shimu. The general idea was that they had kidnapped Mei Su and Jiang Yi. If Hongxian God City wanted to redeem the two of them, they would have to prepare 1,000,000 emerald stones and personally deliver it to Dark Rock Divine City. Mei Ying said worriedly, Our Hongxian Divine City is weaker than Dark Rock Divine City in the first place. Moreover, we don't have 1,000,000 jade stones in our Divine City. We won't be able to take out so many jade stones in such a short time. Furthermore, that Shimu also requested that we deliver it to Dark Rock Divine City within 10 days. Time is really too tight. City Lord, how many days is it from here to Dark Rock Divine City? Zhuowen suddenly asked. If we hurry, we can reach Dark Rock Divine City in about 4 days. Mei Ying said, There's enough time. City Lord, I've told you about the jasper or vein in Death Valley. As long as you can excavate the or vein, you'll have 1,000,000 jade stones. When the time comes, you can send them to Dark Rock Divine City. Zhuowen's gaze was calm. 1,000,000 jadestone or vein might seem like a lot, but as long as Hong Xian God City gathered all the tribes to excavate the Ur vein, they would be able to excavate the Ur vein in 2 to 3 days. Mei Ying looked at Zhuowen with bright eyes and asked, "Is Immortal Masters was speaking the truth? There's no need for me to lie to you. Moreover, I've already said that the discovery of the jasper or vein was due to Miss Mei Su's efforts. I believe City Lord knows her abilities better than I do. She was the one who found the ore vein," Zhuowen said indifferently. Mei Ying no longer doubted that Zhuowen was right. Mei Su was her daughter. She naturally knew that Mei Su had the special ability to sense the jasper or vein. "There's no time to lose. I'll make some preparations and go with you to Death Valley to confirm it. Also, Ying Jie, help me gather all the tribes near Death Valley. Call as many as you can and quickly excavate the ore vein," Mei Ying said. Great Guardian Ying Jie hesitated and said, "The jasper or vein is a secret between the divine cities. City Lord, if we gather all the tribes, won't we be revealing the ore vein to the public? Look at the situation now. Who cares if it's a secret between the divine cities? We must excavate the ore vein as soon as possible. Otherwise, Mei Su and Jiang Yi may die in Dark Rock City," Mei Ying said with a gloomy face. Great Guardian Ying Jie quickly nodded in agreement and left the meeting room in a hurry. He must have gone to arrange the manpower. The Dragon Tribe youth, Hao Rui, laughed dryly. He didn't dare to stay for long and left with Great Guardian Ying Jie. Soon, only Zhuowen and Mei Ying were left in the meeting room. Zhuowen coughed dryly and said to Mei Ying with a smile, "City Lord Mei Ying, I heard that there's a forbidden zone in the Massacre Heavenly Domain. The location of this forbidden zone is very mysterious. Only the City Lord knows the location of this place. I wonder if City Lord knows the location of this forbidden zone?" Mei Ying turned his head and looked at Zhuowen from head to toe. His eyes were solemn as he said, "You want to break into the forbidden zone and leave the Massacre Heavenly Domain?" Zhuowen scratched his head and said, "I do have such a plan. I just entered the Massacre Heavenly Domain not long ago, and I just want to leave as soon as possible. There's still many important things that I need to do in the outside world. I can't stay in a Massacre Heavenly Domain for too long." Mei Ying shook his head and said, "I advise you to give up on this idea. The Forbidden Zone is a taboo in the Massacre Heavenly Domain. Basically, no one who enters it survives. All of them have died in there. Didn't the Massacre Heavenly Domain City Lord, Ziwei, break out of the Forbidden Zone? It seems that the Forbidden Zone isn't a complete dead end," Zhuowen said calmly. Mei Ying smiled bitterly and said, "City Lord Ziwei is a freak and also a demon. I don't find it strange that he could get out, but I'm afraid it will be difficult. Let me tell you the truth. The 3 city lords of the Massacre Heavenly Domain didn't dare to break into the Forbidden Zone. It's not that we don't dare to try. It's just that we have tried in the past. We all narrowly escaped from the Forbidden Zone and survived. We deeply understand how terrifying the Forbidden Zone is." Zhuowen's eyes were calm as he said, "City Lord Mei Ying, I came to Hongxian Divine City for only one purpose, and that is to obtain the exact location of the Forbidden Zone. No matter what you say, I must break into the Forbidden Zone." Mei Ying stared blankly at Zhuowen. He shook his head and said, "There's no harm in telling you the location of the Forbidden Zone. However, you must first bring me to the Death Valley and find the jade or vein. Only then will we break into the Forbidden Zone. When the time comes, I will give you the map of the Forbidden Zone. Don't worry, Miss Mei Su and Uncle Jiang are my friends. Since they are in trouble, I will not sit idly by. I will go to the Forbidden Zone after I rescue them," Zhuowen said calmly. "Then I will thank you on behalf of Mei Su." Mei Ying smiled at Zhuowen. Time is of the essence. Let's go to the Death Valley," Zhuowen said. Chapter 31:51. Sneak attack. Mei Ying could not help but look at Zhuo behind him when he saw the formation at the entrance of the Death Gorge. He asked, "Did you set up this formation before you left?" Zhuo nodded and said, "I set up many similar formations in Death Canyon to prevent the people from Divine City from being disturbed by these killing beasts when they come to mine the mineral vein." Zhuo and Mei Ying spent almost a day rushing to Death Canyon from Divine City. Mei Ying looked deeply at Zhuo and said gratefully, "Celestial Master Zhuo, you are so considerate. Let's go in." Zhuo walked to the entrance and opened the formation. He then led Mei Ying into Death Canyon. The two of them had a smooth journey. After all, along the way, Zhuo had basically set up powerful array formations. Soon, the two of them reached the depths of the canyon. There were still many rock pythons in the depths of the canyon. However, they were all blocked by the formation and could not enter. "There is a jade or vein below the cave," Zhuo said. "Let's go in and take a look." Mei Ying was cautious and walked slowly into the cave. When the two entered the cave, Mei Ying's beautiful eyes could not help but light up when she saw the countless jade green or veins below the cave. Her face flushed with excitement. "It's really a jade or vein. This jade or vein is definitely the biggest one I've ever seen," Mei Ying said excitedly. "City Governor Mei Ying, there is one more thing that I have to confess to you. There's a stone room at the end of the jade or vein. There's a powerful skeleton in the stone room, and its strength should be around that of Master Tong Tian," Zhuo suddenly said. Mei Ying frowned and said, "You want me to help you deal with that powerful skeleton?" Zhuo nodded and took out a jade bucket. This jade bucket contains the Crimson Moon Star Essence. If City Governor Mei Ying agrees to help me deal with that skeleton, this bucket of Crimson Moon Star Essence is yours. Although Zhuo was confident in his 12 Divine Fiends formation, he still felt uneasy. He felt that the green skeleton was not simple. Scarlet Moon Star Wave Milk. Mei Ying was shocked. She opened the lid of the tub and immediately discovered that the lotion in the tub was emitting an extremely dense energy. At the same time, a crimson moon and stars were reflected on the surface of the milk. She knew that this was the legendary Crimson Moon Star Wave Milk, and it was an entire barrel. However, Mei Ying soon realized that Zhuo seemed to have taken out the Crimson Moon Stellar Wave Milk out of thin air. She looked at Zhuo in surprise and said, "Immortal Master Zhuo, could it be that your spatial artifact can be opened? Just now, this barrel of Scarlet Moon Starwave Milk was taken from your spatial artifact." Zhuo smiled faintly and said, "I made a breakthrough in my array Dao in the Slaughter Heaven domain. After that breakthrough, I discovered that my divine soul had reached an unprecedented height. Then, I could actually open the spatial divine tool on my body. Speaking of which, I don't know what's going on either." Zhuo already had an explanation for his ability to take things out of his spatial artifact. He attributed it all to his identity as a divine master of Array Dao. He knew that, with this explanation, Mei Ying would not ask any more questions. After all, Mei Ying knew nothing about Array Dao. Even if she knew Array Dao, she would not be able to reach his level. Mei Ying looked at Zhuo suspiciously. Although she did not believe Zhuo's explanation, she knew that it was a secret, and she did not want to get to the bottom of it. "No wonder you didn't seem to be exhausted at all when you fought with Great Guardian Yingjie. It turns out that you can open your spatial artifact and use the Heavenly Path origin crystals inside." Mei Ying suddenly realized as she recalled Zhuo's previous battle. Zhuo smiled and did not explain further. Instead, he continued, "How about it? A barrel of Crimson Moon Stellar Wave Milk is enough to invite a divine master to help." Mei Ying nodded and said, "I'll help you deal with the green skeleton. Leave the Crimson Moon Stellar Wave Milk in your spatial artifact first. Pass it to me after you've dealt with the green skeleton." The Crimson Moon Stellar Wave Milk was too precious. Even if it was Mei Ying, she could not ignore it. Moreover, the Crimson Moon Stellar Wave Milk was even more precious and important to her in the Slaughter Heaven territory. How could she let go of such an opportunity? "Then let's work together happily. I hope we can get rid of the green skeleton. Zhuowen smiled, but he felt a sense of urgency in his heart. The green skeleton must have been a terrifying expert when it was alive, and it must have had something to do with the green-haired mummy. If it were not for his lack of strength, he would have killed the green-haired mummy long ago. He would not have given the green-haired mummy the chance to leave the 8 heavens. Speaking of which, he still did not know where the green-haired mummy had gone. He also did not know the exact origin of the green-haired mummy. Soon, Zhuowen and Mei Ying arrived at the entrance of the stone chamber. Other than the dried-up pool, there was nothing else in the stone chamber. Mei Ying looked at Zhuowen, puzzled. Didn't he ask her to deal with the green skeleton? Now, there was nothing in the stone chamber, let alone the so-called skeleton. Zhuowen ignored Mei Ying's puzzlement and looked at the left side of the pool. He found that the 12 divine beings killing formation that he had set up before he left was still intact. It was not even activated. Zhuowen frowned. He did not expect the green skeleton to be so cowardly that it did not even activate the 12 divine beings killing formation. It's in the 12 divine beings killing formation that I set up. Moreover, there is a micro-world in the stone chamber. That guy is hiding in that micro-world. Let's see how I force him out. Zhuowen strode forward and came to the left side of the pool. He formed a sword with his right hand and pointed at the void in front of him. The power of space-time gushed out from his fingertips. Suddenly, the surrounding space-time was completely distorted. It was like a fried dough twist, constantly twisting and intertwining. Zhuowen could clearly sense that the small world hidden in the depths of the mountain was collapsing. Boom! Suddenly, a thunderous attack blasted out from the void behind Zhuowen, directly sweeping towards the middle of Zhuowen's back. Zhuowen's face changed drastically. He felt that his life was in danger. The power was too terrifying. It was even more powerful than the power of an early master of heaven ascension. Just as the power was about to hit Zhuowen's back, a dim light flashed by Zhuowen's side. Then, a slender hand grabbed Zhuowen's arm. When Zhuowen opened his eyes, he found that he had left the range of the 12 divine beings killing formation. At that moment, the micro-world in the 12 divine beings killing formation had completely collapsed. A hideous green skeleton appeared in the formation. Chapter 3152. Encircling the Green Skeleton. Thank you, City Governor Mei Ying. Zhuowen cupped his fists and thanked Mei Ying solemnly. He knew that if Mei Ying had not used the soul ambush to pull him away, he would have been ambushed by the green skeleton. With the full power of the green skeleton's attack, Zhuowen would have been seriously injured even if he did not die. Mei Ying waved her hand and looked at the green skeleton seriously. She said, Master Immortal Zhuo, you have offended something terrible. This guy's aura is very strong, and his strength is above mine. Zhuowen was shocked. He knew that Mei Ying's cultivation was at the peak of the early stage of the Master of Heaven. She was not far from the middle stage of the Master of Heaven. Now, that Mei Ying said that she was weaker than the green skeleton. Did it mean that the green skeleton was at least a middle stage of the Master of Heaven? Zhuowen's expression was serious, and he found it unbelievable. When he first saw the green skeleton, its aura was very weak, and it was not as strong as it was now. Zhuowen estimated that the green skeleton's strength was at most at the early stage of the Master of Heaven. It was not as strong as Mei Ying. But now, the strength that the green skeleton had displayed during its sneak attack had shocked Zhuowen. It was at least at the middle stage of the Master of Heaven realm. Oomph. You brought a Master of Heaven to help you this time? The green skeleton's voice was gloomy. It had been preparing for the attack for a long time, and it was supposed to be foolproof. However, it was ruined by Mei Ying, and it was exasperated. At that moment, the 12 divine beings formation had been activated, and the shadows of the 12 ancestors of sorcerers surrounded the green skeleton. Previously, the green skeleton had a small world to hide in. In addition, the green skeleton did not touch the 12 divine fiends formation at all. Therefore, the formation was not triggered at all. However, the small world had been destroyed by Zhuowen using the power of space-time. The green skeleton had nowhere to hide and could only face the 12 divine beings' formation head-on. You have been hiding your strength all this time? Zhuo Wen's eyes were dark as he stared coldly at the green skeleton. The green skeleton didn't argue with Zhuo Wen too much on this issue. Instead, it sneered and said, "Little guy, your 12 divine fiends formation is just a facade. It won't be difficult for me to break it. Now, I'll give you a chance to live. Release this 12 overseer deities, killing formation, and let me leave. I won't care about your rudeness to me before. Of course, you snatched my pool of Crimson Moon Starwave milk. I'll be generous and treat it as a gift to you." The green skeleton said indifferently. When the green skeleton said this, Mei Ying's beautiful eyes revealed a trace of surprise. She didn't expect Zhuowen to have obtained a pool of Crimson Moon Stellar Wave milk. No wonder Zhuowen was able to take out a bucket of Crimson Moon Stellar Wave milk so easily. Zhuowen's face darkened. How could he not see that the green skeleton was trying to sow discord between them? City Governor Mei Ying, I did obtain a pool of Crimson Moon Stellar Wave milk. As long as you help me get rid of this old guy, I'm willing to give you 1/3 of the Crimson Moon Stellar Wave milk as your reward. Zhuowen said in a deep voice. Mei Ying took a deep look at Zhuowen and smiled sweetly. Since Immortal Master Zhuo is so generous, Mei Ying will do her best to help you. I just hope that Immortal Master Zhuo will keep his word. Zhuowen felt helpless. The Crimson Moon Stellar Wave milk was too precious. Even Mei Ying, who looked like an otherworldly fairy, could not resist the temptation of the Crimson Moon Stellar Wave milk. City Governor Mei Ying, don't worry. I'll keep my word. If I do, I'll lose my Tao and die. Zhuowen said seriously. Immortal Master Zhuo's oath is a little heavy. You don't have to do this. Of course, I believe in your character. Mei Ying smiled. Zhuowen had a smile on his face, but he was cursing in his heart. Since you believe in me, you won't remind me to keep my word. Since you've reminded me, I can only use an oath to show my determination. City Governor Mei Ying, I'll completely activate all the power of the 12 divine beings killing formation later. At that time, you and I will enter the formation together and take down this old guy. As Zhuowen spoke, he formed a seal with his hands. Waves of rune-like energy floated out of his hands and poured into the 12 divine beings killing formation in front of him like rain. The blood-red boundary where the great formation of the 12 divine fiends was located seemed to have materialized, and the entire boundary was filled with a terrifying murderous aura. The 12 ancestral sorcerers' illusionary shadows that existed in the great formation even let out earth-shattering roars. Boom! Boom! The silhouettes of the 12 ancestral sorcerers struck at the same time, attacking the green skeleton in the center of the formation. Violent energy spilled out in all directions, and the terrifying pressure crushed the surrounding space, causing the space to seem rather oppressive. City Governor Mei Ying, let's attack together. After the 12 divine beings killing formation was completely activated, Zhuowen stomped his right foot and plunged into the formation like a bolt of lightning. Mei Ying's eyes were solemn as he followed closely behind Zhuowen. Boom! 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 The 12 ancestral sorcerers' phantoms threw out a punch one after another. 12 attacks swept out, creating a terrifying storm in the space and raging in all directions. The green skeleton roared to the sky, and its body burst into a dazzling green light. Immediately, it stomped its right foot and dodged the joint attack of the 12 ancestral sorcerers' phantoms like a ghost. Then, the green skeleton's body flickered in the air and finally appeared in front of the head of one of the ancestral sorcerer's phantoms. Then, the green skeleton clenched its right fist and smashed it hard. The blazing green light energy gathered on the surface of the green skeleton's right fist, making the green skeleton's fist strength look as if it could destroy the world. When the fist hit the ancestral sorcerer's phantoms, the phantom's head was smashed into nothingness. The huge body of the ancestral sorcerer fell to the ground with its back facing the sky. Bang! However, the green skeleton's punch was not without a price. It was seized by another ancestral sorcerer's phantoms, and its waist was hit hard by a punch. Violent energy overflowed in all directions, and the green skeleton was directly smashed to the ground. Smoke and dust rose up, and even the line of sight could not be seen clearly. That ancestral sorcerer roared furiously and threw out another punch toward the deep pit. It was obvious that it wanted to take advantage of the situation and kill it. A green light flashed, and the ancestral sorcerer's phantoms stopped in their tracks. A huge green wound appeared on its chest. The green light in the wound continued to spread and eventually covered the entire body of the ancestral sorcerer's phantoms. Then, the huge body of the ancestral sorcerer's phantoms burst open. The burst of light was a strange green color, which looked demonic and terrifying. In just a few breaths' time, 2 of the 12 ancestral sorcerer's phantoms were killed by the green skeleton. Chapter 3153. Terrifying Heartbeat Boom. The other 10 ancestral sorcerer phantoms rushed over and attacked the green skeleton with terrifying attacks. Unfortunately, the green skeleton easily dodged all of them. The powerful attacks left deep and sinister marks on the ground. Zhuowen waved his sleeve, and the 10 ancestral sorcerer phantoms stopped attacking. Instead, they landed behind Zhuowen. The green skeleton stood opposite him and revealed a mocking smile. "Little guy, didn't I tell you? The 12 divine beings killing array can't trap me. If I destroy all of your 12 ancestral sorcerer phantoms, the array will collapse on its own. City Governor Maying, help me stall this old guy. I must destroy him today. I'll leave these 30 bottles of Crimson Moon Stellar Wave milk with you. Once you've exhausted your energy, you can absorb the Crimson Moon Stellar Wave milk directly." Zhuowen said to Mei Ying as he took out 30 bottles of Crimson Moon Stellar Wave milk and handed them to Mei Ying. Zhuowen knew that it was a critical moment. He would not be reluctant to part with them. Destroying the green skeleton was the most important thing now. Mei Ying was surprised by Zhuowen's generosity. He took the Crimson Moon Stellar Wave milk and unleashed the powerful aura of a master of Skirich. Mei Ying stomped on the ground with his right foot and dashed out like an immortal. His slender and jade-like hands blasted out, carrying with them the power to destroy the heavens and earth. "You're just a 9-tailed fox. How dare you be so presumptuous in front of me? You're courting death." The green skeleton's voice was filled with anger. He took a step forward and punched Mei Ying with his right fist. Boom! Mei Ying clenched his hand into a palm and blasted out. Terrifying energy gushed out from his slender palm. The moment the fist and palm collided, the entire Death Canyon shook. The soil in Death Canyon was extremely hard. Even a master of Skirich would have to spend a lot of effort to dig to such a deep place. However, Mei Ying and the green skeleton had only just exchanged a blow, and there was already such a terrifying shockwave. Thump! 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 Mei Ying let out a muffled groan and retreated continuously, but the green skeleton remained as still as a mountain. The moment Mei Ying retreated, the green skeleton suddenly stepped forward, intending to follow up with another attack to severely injure Mei Ying. However, the moment the green skeleton chased after Mei Ying, the remaining 10 wizard ancestors received Zhuowen's order and came to Mei Ying's aid. For a moment, the green skeleton was entangled and could not catch up with Mei Ying. Zhuowen took out the Ho-E Divine Bow and knocked the Ho-E Divine Arrow on the bowstring. With a whoosh, Ho-Yi's godly arrow shot out with shocking killing intent towards the green skeleton. After shooting the first arrow, Zhuowen didn't stop and took out the second Ho-E Divine Arrow. This second arrow was even more terrifying than the first. Whoosh! Another swishing noise could be heard as the second Ho-E Divine Arrow flashed across the air, leaving a greenish-yellow streak of light in the air, flying straight towards the green skeleton. The green skeleton was entangled by the 10 wizard ancestors and looked down on Zhuowen, so it didn't guard against Zhuowen at all. When the first Ho-E-Divine arrow shot into the green skeleton's body with terrifying killing intent, the green skeleton was immediately sent flying. The violent killing intent rushed into the skeleton's body, and a series of crackling sounds could be heard. It's the Ho-E-Divine arrow. Where did you get it from? The green skeleton immediately recognized the bloody arrow as it was sent flying. It looked at Zhuowen with an unfriendly expression. Unfortunately, when it looked at Zhuowen, the first thing it saw was not Zhuowen, but the second Ho-E-Divine arrow. The green skeleton couldn't help but curse, but the second arrow was too fast. It didn't even give the green skeleton a chance to curse before it rushed into its body. Crack! The two Ho-E-Divine arrows pierced into the green skeleton's body. Zhuowen could clearly see that 4 or 5 of the green skeleton's ribs were broken. Bang! The green skeleton fell to the ground in a sorry state and rolled several times before coming to a stop. Zhuowen's expression was somewhat unsightly. He had thought that the Ho-E-Divine arrows would be enough to seriously injure the green skeleton. But in fact, the green skeleton was indeed injured, but the injuries weren't very serious. Little brat, you've angered me, and the consequences of angering me are very frightening. The green skeleton abruptly pulled out the 2 Ho-E-Divine arrows from its chest, completely ignoring its broken ribs. At this moment, Zhuowen noticed that the green skeleton's heart in its chest had begun to beat violently. And with every beat of the heart, Zhuowen's mood became a little more irritable. The surrounding space also trembled violently. It was as if the heart had the ability to control everything in the surroundings. Suddenly, the heartbeat became extremely fast, and terrifying ripples appeared in the space. Zhuowen's expression changed drastically. He knelt on one knee on the ground. At this moment, an unprecedented amount of energy enveloped his body, causing him to kneel on the ground involuntarily. It was difficult for him to bear. At the same time, Zhuowen also noticed that Mei was standing not far away. His entire body was trembling, and cold sweat was dripping down from his forehead. He knew that Mei was also enduring a terrifying amount of pressure like him. If not for the fact that Mei was more powerful than Zhuowen, he would be kneeling on one knee on the ground like Zhuowen. Damn it! How could mere ants force me to use such a trump card? Damn it, damn it. The green skeleton didn't show any joy of suppressing Zhuowen and Mei. Instead, it was flustered and exasperated. Obviously, the green skeleton had to pay a great price for using such a trump card. Boom! The green skeleton took a step forward to the nearest ancestral sorcerer shadow. It clenched its right hand into a fist and blasted the head of the ancestral sorcerer shadow into pieces. Today, I will make you pay a terrible price. Just 2 mere ants. Boom, boom, boom. As the green skeleton spoke, it quickly threw out 3 punches and destroyed the other 3 ancestral sorcerer shadows. The green skeleton continued to attack. When it had destroyed the head of the last ancestral sorcerer shadow, it slowly came to Zhuowen. Its hollow eyes were flickering with green ghost fire as it stared coldly at Zhuowen. Don't worry, I won't kill you so soon. I'll first extract your soul and whip it with the thunder whip for 49 days. Then, I'll burn it with a refining flame for 81 days. Finally, I'll use the ghost wind to sweep it for 108 days. I'll let you enjoy all the extreme pain in this world before scattering your soul. The green skeleton's voice was cold. It stretched out its right hand and pointed at Zhuowen's glabella. However, it soon realized that something was wrong. This was because a strange black gas suddenly surged out from Zhuowen's body. Bang! In the black gas, a strong wind rushed towards the green skeleton's glabella. Boom! Chapter 3154. The Might of the Yama Ghost Diagram. The green skeleton stabilized its body, and its gaze fell on Zhuowen. It was shocked to find that a black scroll was floating above Zhuowen's head. The black scroll slowly opened. Suddenly, an endless amount of black gas gushed out from the scroll, and formed the image of a huge black skull. Boom! The black skull opened its mouth and rushed out toward the green skeleton. The green skeleton's expression changed slightly. It actually felt an ominous and threatening feeling from the black skull. Bang! The green skeleton suddenly punched out and hit the black skull head-on. A violent power poured out. But the moment it punched out, the green skeleton regretted it. He discovered that the black skull was formless and formless. The moment he punched out, the black skull collapsed and turned into countless wisps of black gas. Then, the collapsed black gas instantly appeared behind it and quickly gathered into a black skull. It opened its mouth and bit at the green skeleton's head. The green skeleton made a prompt decision and turned its head. The black skull directly bit the green skeleton's shoulder. The powerful bite force-bit off the green skeleton's shoulder. The green skeleton hurriedly retreated. It raised its head and screamed. The moment its shoulder was bitten off, it felt as if a part of its divine soul was torn off. At this moment, the green skeleton finally realized how strange the black skull released by the black scroll was. As long as this black skull caused damage to one's body, the damage would be directly reflected back to one's divine soul, causing severe damage to the divine soul. This thing was too strange and unpredictable. At this moment, Zhuan was wrapped in countless black gas. The black scroll opened and floated above his head, flickering with a strange ink-black light. After the green skeleton used its heart to erupt with a terrifying pressure, Zhuan took out the Yama ghost diagram. The power unleashed by the Yama demon portrait was indeed powerful, causing Zhuan to be shocked. Moreover, under the black gas, the pressure from the green skeleton's heart did not affect him as much as before. Meng looked at Zhuan, who was not far away, in shock, especially when he saw Zhuan slowly stand up and walk toward the green skeleton. The shock on his face reached its peak. The green skeleton used its heart as a medium to erupt with a terrifying pressure. Meng knew very well how terrifying it was. One had to know that even though she was still standing, she was actually forcefully holding on. If she were to take a step forward now, she would not be able to do it at all. She was afraid that the moment she took a step forward, she would directly fall to the ground and would not be able to get up. Moreover, even in her current state, she was barely holding on. She could fall to the ground at any time and could not get up. Is this a divine artifact? The green skeleton hurriedly retreated. It looked at Zhuo, who was slowly walking over, and the black skull floating in the air with fear in its eyes. This was the first time it had seen a divine artifact that could directly injure one's spiritual soul. It was really strange. Zhuo sneered as he glanced at the green skeleton. This Yama demon diagram was a terrifying divine artifact in the Xian Mi heavenly domain. Even among transcending heaven-grade divine artifacts, it was a top-notch existence. Although the green skeleton had an extraordinary origin, it was still seriously injured, especially its spiritual soul, which was probably badly damaged. The Yama ghost diagram was just right to restrain this kind of guy. Ghost chain kill. Zhuo endured the excruciating pain and roared. Suddenly, strange black chains flew out from the black scroll floating above his head. There were more than 10 of these black chains, which seemed endless. They surged out and rushed toward the green skeleton at an extremely fast speed. The green skeleton's face changed slightly. It did not dare to get close to Zhuo. It turned around and fled out of the stone room. However, the moment the green skeleton escaped to the door of the stone room, a dim light flashed. Then, the green skeleton realized that the woman in white who had been suppressed by the pressure from his heart had suddenly appeared in front of it. Boom! Mei Ying's jade-like hand slammed into the green skeleton's chest like a butterfly flying through flowers. Violent energy poured out. The green skeleton was obviously not prepared for Mei Ying and was hit directly by her attack. Immediately, it flew backward. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The black chains behind it were like poisonous snakes, entangling the green skeleton in an instant. The moment they entangled the green skeleton, the latter immediately screamed in pain. His spiritual soul was in pain at this moment, as if it was being pricked by needles. It numbed his nerves, causing him to twitch all over and not dare to move. Mei spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. Her pretty face was pale. Just now, she had used her innate ability, Spirit Assault, which allowed her to instantly appear in front of the green skeleton and stop it in time. However, she had paid a heavy price. Her whole body felt like it was falling apart. She was crushed by the terrifying pressure of the green skeleton and could not move at all. The green skeleton's spiritual soul was constantly being stimulated and weakened by the ghost chains. It screamed and struggled more and more violently, but the fear in its eyes became more and more intense. Its spiritual soul was already severely injured. Now that it was being stimulated and weakened by this strange divine weapon, it knew that if it did not do something, its spiritual soul would really be finished. At this moment, Zhuan's 7 orifices began to bleed. His eyes were red as he stared at the green skeleton. The strength of the green skeleton's spiritual soul was somewhat beyond his expectations. With just this one attack, his spiritual soul was also severely injured. The ghost chains of the Yama ghost diagram was a strange move that hurt the enemy by 1,000, but also hurt the user by 800. When it severely injured the enemy's spiritual soul, Zhuan's spiritual soul would also be damaged. Of course, Zhuan only suffered about half the damage of the enemy, but it was still very painful, especially when encountering an enemy whose spiritual soul was more terrifying than Zhuan's. It was simply self-torture for Zhuan. It might even be suicide. Zhuan kept swallowing divine elixirs to recover his spiritual soul. His eyes were full of determination. This time, he must completely destroy the green skeleton. He had a premonition that if he let the green skeleton go today, it might be a big hidden danger for him in the future. Therefore, this guy could not be left alive. Little brat, I'll tell you a secret. As long as you let me go, this secret of mine can give you a great opportunity. The green skeleton endured the pain and said to Zhuan in a low voice. Zhuan did not pay attention to the green skeleton at all. Instead, he continued to control the ghost chains and kept entangling the green skeleton. At the same time, the huge black skeleton slowly moved forward and floated toward the green skeleton. Its huge upper and lower jaws were exaggeratedly opened. Chapter 3155. Possession. I know where to find the Panga banner. The Panga banner belonged to the ancient god of creation, Pangu. Aren't you tempted? The green skeleton suddenly shouted. The corners of Zhuan's mouth curled up into a mocking smile. With a thought, the black skull swallowed the green skull in an instant. The Panga banner was in his spiritual soul. The green skeleton had to be more skillful in its blackmail. The green skeleton screamed in agony. Then its scream stopped abruptly. Poof! Countless wisps of black smoke were sucked into the Yama ghost diagram, and the dozen or so ghost chains also retracted. Bang! The green skeleton fell to the ground, motionless. The green flames in the skeleton's eyes had already been extinguished. Zhuan knew that the remaining spiritual soul of the green skeleton had been completely destroyed by the Yama ghost portrait. Zhuan fell to the ground in a sorry state. Blood flowed out of his orifices and his consciousness was blurred. Nearly 80% of his divine soul had been shattered by the Yama demon portrait, and only the remaining 20% of his divine soul was supporting him to retain a trace of consciousness. With the destruction of the green skeleton's spiritual soul, the terrifying coercion in the space disappeared completely. Mei felt relieved. She hurried to Zhuan's side and asked worriedly, Immortal Master Zhuan, are you all right? Get me out of here. Zhuan's voice was weak as he said to Mei Ying. Mei could see that Zhuan was in a bad state. Without saying anything, she helped Zhuan out of the stone chamber. However, what they didn't notice was that a trace of dark green undercurrent suddenly gushed out from the green skeleton that had fallen on the stone chamber and was completely lifeless. This undercurrent suddenly rushed out and swept toward the back of Zhuowen's head. The speed of the dark green undercurrent was so fast that Zhuowen and Meiying did not notice it first. When they noticed it, the dark green undercurrent had already penetrated into the back of Zhuowen's head. Immortal Master Zhuo, are you all right? Meiying sensed that something was amiss and immediately looked at Zhuowen. He noticed that the latter's forehead was covered in cold sweat and he looked like he was in pain. Zhuowen did not answer. At this moment, his soul was like a lump of paste, and his consciousness was starting to blur. The green undercurrent that had burrowed into Zhuowen's soul was like a maggot that began to wantonly destroy his soul. Brat, you don't know that I still have a trick up my sleeve. I really didn't expect that an ant like you would actually possess such a strange divine artifact. Moreover, he even possesses the inherited divine artifact of the great shaman Ho-E. How extraordinary! But from now on, all the secrets in your body belong to me, and although your physical body is barely passable, it's still passable. The green undercurrent let out a sharp, ear-piercing sound that was filled with pride. Zhuowen recognized the owner of the voice. It was the green skeleton. He really didn't expect this guy to have such a trick up his sleeve. Most likely, this guy had been preparing to take over his body for a long time. His previous performance was just to numb him. However, this green skeleton was very cautious. It kept moving forward in Zhuowen's soul and was always vigilant. Old guy, as long as you don't take over my body, everything is negotiable. I can give you everything I have. Zhuowen's voice became a little frightened and flustered. Zhuowen was naturally not really afraid of being taken over. His soul had the Panga banner. If this guy really took over his body, he would be the unlucky one. However, this green skeleton was very cautious. After entering his soul, the first thing it did was not to take over his body, but to observe his soul. Zhuowen secretly scolded this guy for being too vigilant. If this old guy directly took over his body, he would immediately activate the Panga banner. At that time, this old guy's soul would not be able to escape. Now you know how to be afraid? Unfortunately, it's too late. The green skeleton felt the fear in Zhuowen's divine thought and couldn't help laughing complacently. Immediately, it relaxed its vigilance and began to take over Zhuowen's body. The green undercurrent became larger and larger, and the light emitted from it became more and more blazing. It filled Zhuowen's soul. However, the moment the green undercurrent spread to the whole soul, the green skeleton immediately screamed. In the depths of Zhuowen's soul, an ancient and powerful energy suddenly surged out and suppressed all the energy of the green undercurrent in an instant. What kind of energy is this? The green skeleton screamed, and its voice was full of disbelief. In front of this ancient and powerful energy, it had no power to resist. It was as if this energy wanted it to die, and it had no choice but to die. Then, the green skeleton's divine thought found that a big banner swept out from the depths of Zhuowen's soul. On the banner, there was a supreme picture of the great god Pangu holding the heaven-splitting divine axe in his hand. Outside the banner, there were mysterious prophecies circling around it, and inside the banner, there were heaven-splitting talismans looming. The five-colored light illuminated the sky, and Pangu's divine might shook the world. The moment it saw this big banner, the green skeleton couldn't help but scream, "Is this the Panga banner? It's actually the Panga banner? How is this possible? This thing is actually in your soul." The green skeleton finally knew why Zhuowen showed a mocking smile when it said that it wanted to provide clues about the Panga banner. It turned out that the Panga banner that it was talking about was actually in this guy's body. No. Let me go this time. I was wrong. I'm willing to bow down to you and obey your orders, as long as you let me go. The green skeleton revealed a look of despair. It had lived for a very long time and knew how terrifying the Panga banner was. It could be said that if it encountered the Panga banner now, it would definitely die. There was no chance of survival at all. The only thing it could do now was to kneel down and beg the young man in front of it for mercy and spare its life. Unfortunately, the green skeleton was answered with a long silence. The pressure of the Panga banner became more and more terrifying. The green skeleton's divine thought was constantly shrinking and being consumed by the power of the Panga banner. In the end, the Panga banner shook violently in Zhuan's soul, and a terrifying energy spread in his soul, expelling and destroying all the green undercurrents. Zhuan spat out another mouthful of blood. Of the remaining 20% of his soul, another 10% had been destroyed in the battle of possession just now. His head was in so much pain that he was almost dying, and he was about to faint. It was also at this moment that the Panga banner suddenly swept to the center of his soul. Then, a gentle milky white energy surged out from the Panga banner. This milky white energy fused into Zhuan's soul, and like a clear stream, it quickly repaired Zhuan's soul. After an unknown period of time, the Panga banner slowly retracted and hid in the depths of Zhuan's soul. Zhuan suddenly opened his eyes. In his eyes, an extremely bright light flickered. The energy that the Panga banner had given him this time was really of great help to his soul. At this moment, his soul had almost undergone a transformation and had made great progress. Chapter 31:56. Dark Rock City. After opening his eyes, Zhuan noticed that there were two more people in the stone room besides Mei Ying. Zhuan was no stranger to these two people. They were Hongxian City's great guardian Ying Jie and Hao Rui from the Dragon Tribe. When the three of them saw that Zhuan had woken up, they relaxed. Immortal Master Zhuo, you are finally awake. Mei Ying did not get close to Zhuan. Instead, she stood a distance away from Zhuan. Her beautiful eyes scanned Zhuan, and she asked with caution, Immortal Master Zhuo, what happened just now? Zhuan felt helpless. He knew what Mei Ying meant. She probably knew that he had been possessed by the green skeleton. She was not sure if the possession was successful. Zhuan spread out his hands and said, City Lord Mei Ying, don't worry. I was not possessed. That old fellow failed in the end. Although Zhuan had explained, Mei Ying still didn't believe him. Zhuan had no choice but to tell Mei Ying about the misunderstanding that had happened in Hongxian Divine City in order to prove that he hadn't been possessed. After all, after the possession, one would become another person. Zhuan's memories could not be so clear. After hearing Zhuan's detailed explanation, Mei Ying finally believed that Zhuan had not been possessed. How long have I been unconscious? Zhuan looked at Great Guardian Ying Jie and Hao Rui from the Dragon Tribe before asking Mei Ying. You have been unconscious for 2 days. In these 2 days, we have mined all the jade stones in this mine. There are a total of 2 million jade stones. Speaking of the jade stone mine, Mei Ying's eyes were filled with excitement. Are you planning to go to Dark Rock City? Zhuan saw that the three of them were fully armed, and he knew that Mei Ying and the rest were planning to bring the 1 million jade stones to Dark Rock City. Yes, we originally planned to wait for you for another day to see if you would wake up. If you didn't wake up, we would have gone to Dark Rock City first. Mei Ying said bluntly. Since you plan to set off, count me in. Zhuan said with a smile. The matter at the Death Canyon had been completely resolved. After rescuing Mei Su and the others, Zhuan planned to break into the forbidden area of the Slaughter Heaven region and leave this damned place for good. But before I leave, City Governor Mei Ying, I have something to say to you alone. Zhuan looked at Ying Jie and the young man from the Dragon Tribe and said in a deep voice, Great Guardian Ying Jie and the young man from the Dragon Clan were tactful enough to leave the stone chamber. After the two of them left, Zhuan waved his sleeve and took out 30 barrels of Crimson Moon Star Ripple milk, saying, City Lord Mei Ying, we were able to deal with the green skeleton this time because of your help. This is the reward we agreed on in advance. So many. Mei Ying was stunned. She knew that Zhuan had a lot of Crimson Moon Star Ripple milk, but she thought that there were only a dozen barrels. However, Zhuan had taken out more than 30 barrels. This was only 1/3 of the Crimson Moon Star Ripple milk that Zhuan had with him. Didn't this mean that there were more than 100 barrels of Crimson Moon Star Ripple milk on him? At this moment, Mei Ying felt a little embarrassed. The Crimson Moonstar Ripple Milk was too precious. A small bottle of Crimson Moonstar Ripple Milk was already priceless, let alone the 30 barrels in front of her. City Governor Mei Ying, you are welcome. I, Zhuowen, have always been a man of my words. Since I have promised you, I will naturally do it. I will not lie. Zhuowen looked serious as he pushed the 30 barrels of Crimson Moonstar Ripple Milk to Mei Ying. Mei Ying's beautiful eyes were filled with gratitude. At the same time, she thought more highly of Zhuowen. To be honest, the world of cultivation was very cruel. This cruelty was even more vivid in the Slaughter Heaven region. In order to fight for resources, many brothers had turned against each other and friends had killed each other. However, Zhuowen had given her so much Crimson Moonstar Ripple Milk just because he had promised her. Mei Ying knew that Zhuowen was an extremely principled person. Thank you, Immortal Master Zhua. Mei Ying kept the Crimson Moon Star Ripple Milk. She summoned her trusted subordinates to transport the 30 barrels of Crimson Moon Star Ripple Milk back to Hongxian City. Then, she left Death Canyon with Zhuowen. After walking out of the canyon, Zhuowen realized that there were more than 1,000 cavalrymen waiting outside the canyon. Behind these cavalrymen were groups of carriages. Behind each group of carriages, there were large amounts of emerald stones. However, these emerald stones were covered with white cloth and tied with ropes. Zhuowen looked at these carriages and felt strange. Ever since he had started cultivating, cultivators had basically used spiritual rings to store things. Only the mortal world would need a group of carriages to transport goods. It was rare in the world of cultivation. However, in the Slaughter Heaven region, it was too rare. Moreover, it was a group of cultivators imitating the mortals. After all, spatial artifacts were completely ineffective here. They could only use such primitive methods to transport goods. Of course, Zhuowen's great world was big enough. He could store all the emerald stones in his great world. However, if he did that, the fact that he could open a spatial artifact would become known to everyone. This was not a good thing for him. Therefore, Zhuowen really wouldn't do such a stupid thing. 1 million emerald stones have been prepared. This time, the fastest cavalryman in Hongxian City will be in charge of the transportation. It will take about 4 days to reach Dark Rock Divine City from Death Canyon. By then, we will be able to reach Dark Rock Divine City smoothly. Mei Ying took a dragon horse from a cavalryman. With a kick of her right leg, she mounted the dragon horse. Zhuowen also took a dragon horse and mounted it. He walked side by side with Mei Ying to the front of the group. Great Guardian Ying Jie and the young man from the dragon tribe followed closely behind them. Let's go. Our destination is Dark Rock Divine City. Mei Ying's cold voice rang in everyone's ears. Then, Mei Ying pulled on the reins. The dragon horse at the front neighed and galloped away. The group behind, Mei Ying followed closely behind. The sound of iron hooves thundered across the ground. 4 days later, Mei Ying and Zhuowen rode side by side on their dragon horses and stopped on a small hill. A large group of cavalrymen stood behind the hill. Their eyes were filled with unparalleled fighting spirit. Is that Dark Rock Divine City? Zhuowen gazed into the distance. There lay a gigantic city that was not the slightest bit inferior to the Hongxian Divine City. The huge city looked like a huge meteorite. It was oval in shape. On the surface of the huge city, there was a dark red flowing light. At first glance, one could tell that it was a powerful killing array. Above the city walls of Dark Rock Divine City, Zhuowen saw groups of warriors in black armor. The leader was a middle-aged man with a solemn expression. The middle-aged man was in a black robe. His eyes were as deep as the sea. He looked at the small hill with a faint smile on his face. Yes, this is Dark Rock Divine City. Let's go. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.